Welcome to the Arlington County Transportation Commission. It's October 29th in the year of 2020. I'll turn this over to our chairman.
Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all on Zoom. I hope everyone is happy and healthy and everyone's family is making it through this this tough time. But we have some great important transportation items on the agenda. So let's go ahead and get started. Mr. Best.
Very good. Item 1 is citizen comment on matters not on the agenda. And we do have a speaker for this. We have Kevin Robbins, and I believe Mr. Robbins is going to speak on 2 items. And I will be timing him via my cell phone. So, Mr. Robbins, you can take it away.
How much time do I got?
You have 3 minutes per item.
Okay. I don't know how, if it's morphs into one item, so that maybe I can get 6 for the one. We'll see what happens here. I'll try and talk quickly. No, I'm just a county resident. I'm here in that capacity. I live on a one-way street. I'm sure it's grandfathered in, even the width of the street. I don't know if you have any of the information that was sent in. There's a ticketing system for traffic issues through the Department of Environmental Services. I submitted a ticket back on September 11th, right?
Yeah, actually, we have not received anything. I just received that you wanted to speak, and maybe you could give your address.
Sure, 2108 North Brandywine. So I have some pictures. I guess there was 2 issues. One is what is addressing the process, and then 2 addressing my specific issue on the street. I don't know who knows about the ticketing system or the process for traffic engineering, but put in the request, said, hey, it's a one-way street. I wish I could show you a photo. That would be helpful. Is that possible?
Are you able to share your screen?
Sure. I mean, if I can, let me see here.
It's on the toolbar. There's 3 dots.
Yep.
Actually, no, it's a little box with an arrow.
Box with the arrow. Open share tray? Nope.
Yeah.
Open share tray. We're going with that. Okay. So let's go with the desktop. Okay, good. We're making progress here. I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to hit share. And then I'm going to go and find this thing to share. Here, boom. Okay, good. So I'm going to show you these 3 photos in quick succession because my clock is ticking here. Okay, so this is the first intersection. You can see there's a stop sign. Can you see what I'm pointing at?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you come down. This is 21st Street. It's a stop sign. This where the vehicle is a one-way street, and it's and there's no stop sign, right? So you come here. You obviously can't see what's around this corner because of the wall and the vehicle, right? And so as you inch out to the car, these people are coming down, and even at per the defined speed or whatever, it still gets pretty tight as you come into this corner, right? So that's my concern. The $1 million concern is that there's the way to do this now. So I put in a ticket. You can't apparently talk to the traffic engineering department. Did you know that was part of the process, that you can't correspond, you can't speak to anyone in the traffic engineering group in terms of your issues?
Currently in the pandemic mode, it is difficult to get a staff person. Most staff people don't come in the office, and I'm glad to check on this, either tomorrow or next week. I don't really, have access to this now.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, I just, if better minds me. So this is the view you can see from the other side, right? So it seems to me this, basically the first request I put in back on the 11th was, can you put a mirror? It would be over down in this corner, right? So if you come in from where I showed you before, you could, one of those curved mirror things, but apparently those curved mirror things are not allowed on public right-of-ways. That's the response I get. So the first response I get is, sorry, we don't do curved mirrors. Your ticket's closed, and if you have any more questions, call the police if there's a traffic issue. So it was pretty concise. No mirror. I didn't know any better. I'm not a traffic guy, right? So that's 2, and then and that's fine. And so I opened it. So I called back in, and here, still voicing my concern. And I guess the ticket's back open now. And this is the 3rd view from the front side, so you can see where the cars come down, right? So their thing is, it looks like their current note out is, let's take away more parking. They've already, if you look, this is a really tight neighborhood. They've already taken away parking. I can't see why they took away some of the parking they did. It'd be great to talk to someone about that, but I guess in the pandemic mode, that's a challenge. But so my suggestion would be, not a traffic engineering guy, would be to put where I showed you the other photo, to put a stop sign there. And that's it. That's my big complicated issue. I can try and go into the ticketing system and how that works and all that. And I understand their transition. It's a new system. They went from the old to the new in the last few weeks. So that's probably part of the challenge. So, thank you guys. I love my county. I've been here my whole life. And I just knew about this vehicle because I've been here a long time. That's it.
Yeah, and Mr. Robbins, I'm super familiar with your community of Glebewood Village.
Yep.
And I will check with traffic engineering either tomorrow or early next week.
Okay.
It's a case where, obviously I don't review the tickets.
Okay.
And
I can show you them real quick if that's helpful. I can forward them to you, whatever you'd like. Whatever's good for you.
Forward them to me at our best.
Okay, bear with me. I'm going to just write it down instead of me trying to do it on the fly. Hold on. Sorry about that.
Right.
Okay. Initial R. Wait a sec. I got to find a good place for initial R. B-E-S-T. Yep.
Yeah, at arlingtonva.us.
Okay.
Simple enough. And we can correspond on this probably early next week is best.
Okay.
I don't know if the commission would like to address Mr. Robbins' concerns or.
I just wanted to say, one, I put Mr. Best's email address into the chat also in case that's helpful to double check, the spelling or anything there. And, we're as an advisory body, we deal mostly with policy, but the idea that mirrors, which I've certainly seen be helpful in some places in the past, not being allowed in public right of way is news to me. And I would love to understand what policy in the master transportation plan or what other document that notion might be coming out of. So I appreciate you coming to the commission and presenting your issue. And I will follow up with Mr. Best, and I hope staff can bring you to a good outcome.
Okay, no, I really appreciate that. And no, literally, they that's what they said in the email. So that's great. Thank you. It looks like we have a lot of different tentacles working on the problem now. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Take care, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to drop then, I guess. All right. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
And our next item is item number 2. This is micro mobility. It's an update. So, Jim.
Thank you. Really briefly, it's been a while since we've talked about various activities. Just want to let you know where we are now. I'll remind you, it's not a big deal. It was September of 2018 when we approved the pilot. November, the permanent program began. October 2020, we're now accepting applications for second year of the permit program for micromobility. So, generally speaking, as you know, with COVID, a lot of them went away. Now they're starting to come back. We have an authorized level for e-scooters of 2,000. And I won't go through the detail, but Bird has the largest number. Bolt is here, Helmets is here, Lime is here, Link is here, Raisin is here, Skip is here, and Spin is here. So most operators, as I alluded to earlier, removed their fleets worldwide from March through May and June. Very few devices were available from mid-March through June. Now all but one operator has resumed service. The 2 new operators were in that group I just listed. The good news, but it's also because there weren't many out there, I think, the number of complaints declined to almost 0 between March and June. That number remained low from July to the present time, despite the number of devices meeting or exceeding the pre-COVID levels. So, give you an idea, a little comparison, trip statistics from January to August, 135,000 trips started in Arlington, now down from 500,000 from the same period in 2019. 4 crashes were reported by operators in 2020. And as I said, after declining significantly from March to May, there are now approximately 1,000 vehicles available for rent every day. Further update, just to give you a brief overview. We're now accepting applications, as I alluded to, for 2021. No changes from the 2020 permit. So they can apply for up to 2,000 e-scooters and 1,000 e-bikes to be split among highest scoring applicants. A speedometer is still required. So what's coming up as we're looking at returning to whatever normal might mean? Installation of new corrals, we're looking at that again. Maintenance of all corrals paused during COVID. Also, we did install right before COVID, or about the time it hit, signs and stencils at the beginning of protected bike lanes, except Wilson Boulevard, which is closed. That's kind of the summary. It won't surprise you to know that nationwide with COVID, this has been a rolling situation. What we're going to now, and we're going to probably meet with the operators in December, is reminding them of all the things that we want: safety, properly installed facilities elsewhere in the county, looking at equity, things like that. But in general, I can tell you that overall, it's been a relatively quiet time. So that's kind of my brief update. I welcome any questions or things to look into, and we'll be back again after the permit process begins. Well, it's now, but before the end of the year, we should be back to you again.
Sounds good. Mr. Best, do we have any speakers on this item?
Oh, we do not.
All right. Mr. Larson, I know I know a certain amount of testing was done at the beginning of the pilot as far as seeing whether the providers were properly speed limiting their vehicles. Have you had good, have the operators been good about that in Arlington in your experience?
I would say in general they have, and the recent ones that entered into the situation where we tested them, pretty good too. We frankly, during the COVID time, we may not have been as on top of monitoring them because there were a few here. So the bottom line, Chris, is now we need to get back on the board and start enforcing them again.
All right. Any other commissioner questions for Mr. Larson? Feel free to throw your virtual hand up or put a message in the chat for me. I'm happy to recognize you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brose.
Yeah, I'll just say, having used a scooter during the time of COVID, I did notice the restrictions on the the speedometer thing. So I think from my own experience, it seems to be working. So look forward to hearing more about that.
Great. Commissioner Buck.
Hey, Mr. Larson, long time no see. So do we have any vendors who have more than 4 letters in their name yet? That was a joke. Never mind.
I like it.
Yeah, thank you. So the micromobility pilot had some good screenshots of trip behavior and where people are traveling with those. I'm wondering if there's any, outside of the pilot report, any plans or inclinations to do some more data releases of where people are riding, how maybe that's being used by DES planners in facility planning.
Like totally think like red, like sushi center before.
So I'm hearing a lot of over talk, but if I heard you correctly, Darren, the whole subject of data and analysis, we're actually now looking at that subject. I cannot give you a conclusion, but I'd love for you to connect with me. Anything you think makes sense, we'd be happy to look into it. I will say
see more maps.
Here's an anecdotal thing. You've seen Bird, what they look like on their thing, and helps. Their identity on their scooters, for example, looks very similar. So if you're a user or somebody complaining, when you look from a distance, I was chasing down Bird. It turns out it was another company. So we've had some interesting, these are little small anecdotal things that we're learning in the process. We shall see where that goes.
Great. Commissioner Clement.
Yes, regarding enforcement. Now I understand, like when a police officer wants to cite a motorist, he generally jots down the license plate. So my guess is that when a police officer wants to cite a scooter, a rented scooter, he jots down the permit number. And so I'd like verification of that. And also, what does a police officer do if he wants to cite a privately owned scooter operator? How does he do that? The implication of my question is if it
Sure.
can't be done, then the laws can't be enforced equally. In other words, we talk about equity. Well, motorists want to know if the law is going to be enforced against them, they want to be sure that the law is going to be enforced against violators who happen to be scooter riders.
So preliminarily, Ms. Clement, I will say that if they observe behavior that's not accurate or appropriate, just like bicycles, they can stop them and cite them. Is that going on right now? I don't speak for the police department. I cannot say that for sure. However, your point about enforcement, certainly they can be enforced, but there's been very little reports of violations at this point. Let me look into that, though. I'll get back to you with a few more details on that.
All right, but I just want to say that generally speaking, if an officer wants to cite a regular vehicle, he places the license number on the citation, or in effect, the citation is not legal until or unless he does, because the judge of the court needs to have that information to make sure that the person accused is in fact the person who violated the law or allegedly violated the law. So if that type of information is not available on a scooter, then in effect the law is not enforceable should a police officer wish to enforce it.
I will note that I'm not the county attorney or the police department, so I'm not going to answer you today, but I like your point. It's a very good point. I will follow up on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just feel the need to say that the SMD ordinances are just as enforceable as a jaywalking ticket is enforceable.
Right.
Pedestrians don't have a license plate either, and yet you can still ticket them.
Correct.
The same way you can ticket a car for failure to display tags, like a car without license plates can still be ticketed for not having license plates.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other commission questions for Mr. Larson? All right, seeing none, thank you for coming out. Thank you for hopping onto Teams, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, everybody.
Look forward to seeing you again.
And our next item is item number 3. This is the NVTC FY 2022-2023 Round 2 I-395-95 commuter choice. I'll turn it over to Rich Roisman. Just a quick note, if you're not speaking, if you could turn your mic off so we don't have feedback. Thank you. Take it away, Rich.
Good evening, Commissioners. Can everyone hear me? All right, and hopefully you can see on a screen a PDF with this subject item on it. Okay, got double thumbs up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. I have 2 information items for you this evening, both of them with regard to external funding. The first one is a first look at the NVTC fiscal year 22 and 23 round 2 I-395, I-95 commuter choice program call for projects. This is only the second round of this particular program, and commuter choice itself has not been around for that long, so I'm going to take a little bit of time to go over a little bit about the program itself. I-395, 95 commuter choice is a discretionary funding competitive grant program for transportation, operating, and capital projects. In the case of this corridor, due to the geography is concerned, this one is jointly administered by NVTC, PRTC, and the Commonwealth of Virginia. The call for projects is every other year, an even number of calendar years, and program funding is $30 million for a 2-year program. There is no local match requirement. And you'll see several star notes through the course of my presentation. This is because there are still policy and technical evaluation changes which are pending but have not yet been approved by the NVTC. The formal release of the call for projects will be at NVTC's upcoming meeting a week from tonight. So eligible applicants and requirements, and I see my screen flashing. I hope it's not doing that over the broadcast as well, but I will continue nonetheless. You can see the short map showing the geographic range of the eligible applicants, both those jurisdictions going from Loudoun County down to Spotsylvania, as well as transit agencies within those jurisdictions and those service areas. Projects must meet all criteria, such as benefit the toll-paying users of I-395, I-95. This is similar to the requirements of the I-66 commuter choice program. You need to, your project needs to attain at least one of the improvement goals, which are maximizing person throughput, implementing multimodal improvements to improve mobility along the corridor, support new and diverse travel choices, enhance transportation safety and travel reliability, and eligible project types, which I'll go over on the next slide. Funds must be obligated in 2 years and expended within 5, and pending the adoption of these rules by the Commission, this time there is a minimum program request of $200,000. In round 1, Arlington County was awarded just over $200,000 in operating funds to operate the Pentagon commuter store, actually on the Pentagon reservation. So what are some eligible project types? Newer enhanced local and commuter bus service, including both capital and operating expenses. Commuter choice is somewhat unique in our external funding programs that it will fund operating costs with some limitations. Expansion or enhancement of TDM strategies, including van pool, formal and informal carpooling programs and assistance. Capital improvements for Metro Rail and Metro Bus. Continuing the eligible project types, newer enhanced park and ride lots, not usually relevant for Arlington County, but certainly taken advantage of from some of the outer jurisdictions. Newer enhanced VRE improvements or services, dealing with capital and operating. Roadway improvements in the corridor. Transportation system management and operations, again with limitations based on federal code's definition of TSM&O. And projects that are identified in long-range plans and studies, including the TPB's Constrained Long-Range Plan and the NVTA Transaction Plan. There are limitations on some of the project types, and I will make sure that both this presentation and my one for the next item go out to the commissioners through Mr. Best, so particularly with the blinking stuff and some of the things that may not be easily readable here. But there are limitations on different types of projects depending on what you end up submitting. So new for this program is the allowance of larger capital projects. These are capital program requests between $5 and $20 million. If you are competing for that type of project, and again, this policy change is pending adoption by the 2 commissions, but assuming it goes through, the commuter choice program will only fund asset acquisition, including land and construction. So if you need to do additional planning or PE beforehand, that needs to be funded through other funding sources. Additional supporting documentation is required, again, just to make sure that the capital project can meet the requirements, and particularly the expenditure requirements of the program. And depending on how large it is, and the commissions may split the award over 2 consecutive 2-year funding programs. This is a quick overview of the technical evaluation process. It's a 100-point score, with most of those points going to technical merit, and the subcomponents of that, including person throughput, travel time savings, transportation connections, accessibility, and diversion mitigation are part of that score. One of the changes this time is the interagency collaboration. And again, that change is pending adoption by the commissions. Also note that there is a 10-point preference given to the applicant's number 1 priority project if they are applying for more than one. There's a quick overview of the program schedule. The call for projects, again, will be coming next week. Applications will be accepted through January, and I'll go into details on this on the next slide. Public meeting and comment period in the spring, and then the commission will select the program in June, and then it goes to the CTB for approval and inclusion in the next 6-year improvement plan. So here's the detailed schedule. A NVTC program staff hosted an applicant webinar back on October 6th, and county staff attended. We've been holding internal meetings with county DOT staff and leadership to come up with the list that's coming before you this evening. On October 23rd, we submitted that list to NVTC program staff for initial discussion in mid-November. We're here this evening to provide an information briefing to the TC. NVTC is expected to adopt the changes to policy and technical evaluation for commuter choice and formally open the call for projects at their upcoming meeting on November 5th. We are here this evening requesting written comments from the TC back to staff on the application list by November 13th. On the 18th, we go in to meet with NVTC program staff face-to-face virtually to review the application list and get their feedback. Then there'll be more internal discussions and additional development of applications. We will come back for a TC action item, probably at the meeting to be scheduled after the November 23rd meeting, depending on what the dates are of those. Following TC action, we will bring this to the county board. We anticipate that in January of 2021 because applications are due to the commission at close of business on January 29th, 2021. So here's the list we're bringing forward this morning. There are 5 projects listed. Again, keep in mind that we're still fairly early in the application development process, so you see a lot of TBDs on here. And these are not in any specific order. Although I will say that between the two bike and trail improvements, there is a preference for George Mason over 4 Mile Run Trail, but in general, these are not in any other ranked order. First project is to extend or improve bike lanes along South George Mason Drive. This is a fairly scalable project. The maximum project limits that we see are from the Fairfax County, Arlington County line up to Arlington Boulevard, Route 50. Again, the cost estimate is going to depend on what the project limits look like, but we would not make a program request greater than $4 million. Second project is improvements to the 4 Mile Run Trail. This is an area, this is where the bridge crosses the junction between 4 Mile Run and the Long Branch, between South Troy Street and South Meade Street. Along here, the trail itself is on the south side of the roadway, basically as a wide sidewalk, and on the north side of the roadway, including on the bridge, there is a fairly generous on-street parking lane. So the concept would be to reconfigure the section of roadway there to effectively widen the trail that appears as a sidewalk on the south side of the roadway. And we have not come up with a cost estimate for that project as of yet. Third idea is a TDM program, getting back to transit in the 395 corridor. It would be employer-based to make sure that we can measure the results accurately and guarantee that we are providing benefit to the toll payers of 95 and 395. This could take many forms, including van pool formation, transit buyback, fare buyback for transit routes that are serving the corridor and serving employers in the corridor within the county, as well as other marketing and other components that you would see in a typical TDM program. One project is being considered as a large capital project, which is the Army-Navy Drive Transit Center. This would need to be done in coordination with both WMATA and Washington Headquarters Service. This is a project which is in the WMATA CIP, which would construct an eight bus bay transit center and the surface parking lot that is now bounded by Army-Navy Drive, 395, Joyce, and I believe Hayes Street, near where the Army-Navy Drive Complete Street is already ongoing, as well as the termination of the Crystal City Potomac Yard Transitway. WMATA has a cost estimate of $7 million from fiscal 19, and there is a design, I believe 100% design complete, but it's from 2015, so we anticipate that it would probably need to be refreshed, as well as environmental documentation added to complete the design. Because of the large capital provisions under commuter choice cannot fund those phases. It will only fund the land acquisition and construction. So something to consider as we're looking at that. And then applying for a repeat of operation funding for the Pentagon Commuter Store, approximately $450,000 for 2 years of operation. Oh, blank. That's not helpful. I think I see the problem, which is it couldn't necessarily handle all of the graphics that I threw at it. Just some quick caveats. We're still fairly early on in the development process, application development, so costs need refinement. And project limits still have yet to be finalized. But bottom line is the list is what we put before you. We're asking for written comments back from the commission through Mr. Best by November 13th, so we have feedback from the commission in our hands before we go to talk with NVTC staff on the 18th. And then following that, we'll bring a final list back for action as we get closer to the January deadline and the anticipated county board action on this item. Let me unshare so things stop flickering and stop for a moment for questions from commissioners.
Awesome. Mr. Roisman, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm so sorry that your PDF viewer hated your PDFs quite so much. That was indeed hard to read at times. But I especially really appreciate staff coming into us so early in this grant application process. I find this to be extremely helpful. Do any commissioners have questions for Mr. Roisman about the grant program in general, or about any of these particular ideas for projects? Commissioner Buck.
Sorry, mute button. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm
Absolutely
flying new with this mic. So it's pretty cool that there's a grant program that funds operations. That's kind of rare. But a lot of these are capital projects. I'm wondering, was any consideration given to art bus service, and maybe whether that's identifying a line that sort of hits all of the 395 corridor or 66 corridor or whatever the corridors are that fund this, looking at, say, advancing headways beyond what maybe current service justifies, and funding that, or any sort of other transit operations costs that would be good candidates for this particular program.
So in our discussions with the ART folks, we did look at the ART 87, which provides service within the 395 corridor. The determination was that it was, sorry, I believe my screen is unshared, but perhaps not. Let me just make sure I'm unsharing before I go on and answer the question. Let's see here. What are people seeing on screen at this moment?
I'm still seeing your presentation.
Slides.
All right. Now let's get rid of that. Just a second. Unshare. All right, I'll leave it up for the time being. We looked at the ART 87, and the conclusion was that given the overall service impacts to ART due to the pandemic, that it didn't make sense to apply for funding to provide enhancements to that route, at least not at this time. So.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Rich.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Reisman, for sharing this. It's so wonderful to be involved in this so early in the process, as Chairman Slott was saying. I have 2 points. First, on this idea list, I love the South George Mason Drive bike lane proposal, but I would want to make sure that those are fully physically protected bicycle lanes. In my opinion, I don't think that we should be dedicating funding to anything less. And my other question is, if you could go back, please, to the slide where you showed the smart scale sort of breakdown of factors by which decisions are made.
Sure, just a moment. Let me reshare.
Okay.
Technology is not my friend this evening. All right. Here's you had a specific question about the technical evaluation criteria.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not seeing it on the screen, but I remember it well enough to sort of ask anyway. First of all, I'd love to know who at NVTC I might be able to talk about to understand this better. I know that you don't represent them directly. But specifically, I'm most interested in that biggest block under the technical evaluation, the 40%, I believe it was, based on person throughput.
Yes.
Now, of course, I'm very happy that we're doing this based on person throughput, not vehicle throughput, but I still think that that's not really the most, modern measurement of mobility system capacity or quality. I would love to see that be based on access instead. Sort of the, improvement in number of people who can access a number of destinations within a given amount of time. Again, I'm certain, I know that this is not your responsibility, but I wanted to voice that and I suppose ask whether staff has any of the same thoughts.
We can certainly pass that along to the relevant staff at NVTC, and I think we're always looking for, both what is the best set of measures for achieving the goals that the program is supposed to do if it's not one of our programs, providing comment where necessary, while also making sure that we can put forth projects that meet the criteria so we can get awarded outside funding. So it's a balancing act.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Commissioner Price.
Actually, you can't hear me at all because I didn't have my my microphone turned on. So yes, thank you again for recognizing me, and Mr. Reisman, I appreciate your presentation. Just a couple of things. So you want the Transportation Commission to make comments, I assume, individually from members on all of these projects in the next 2 weeks. So you can go into your meeting with comments from the members. Is that correct?
I will leave it to the chair as to how he wants the comments to be packaged. They are coming when the commission is requested to act on this before it goes to the board. They are requested to act as a commission. So I will leave it to the chair's discretion how he wants to handle comments on this as an information item.
Right, because I'm slightly concerned because, the only detail I have is on the screen right directly in front of me. And usually when I would comment on things or even in written comments, I would need, how do I say this, more detail. But that's just me. That's my first point. My second point is, and first I would love to have had these details in advance so I could have done my own homework. Second, so we've got 5 projects. Were there projects that were sort of on the cusp that you were thinking about including but just didn't make the cut? And if so, what were they? I know that's my favorite question. I love asking that question.
I love responding to it, Commissioner Price. So I mentioned the Art 87 already. Other projects that were considered internally and did not make the list that was presented this evening are the I-395 interchange improvements at Shirlington Circle. That is not yet ripe for either the county or Alexandria to go forward for this funding round. Same thing with expansion of the Shirlington bus station. That is largely tied to dash service improvements that are tied to the city's West End Transitway, and with those not yet forthcoming, we're not ready to expand the station. The only other one that was looked at, but again dropped, is both bike ped and bus stop improvements along South Walter Reed Drive. We felt that George Mason and the 4 Mile Run Trail were better candidates as they had more planning work in front of them. So, and we're more ripe for this program.
Mr. Reisman, thank you. As always, you are truly appreciated.
Certainly.
Commissioner Lantelme, you're up next.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great presentation. I like the project, but I do have some questions about the 4 Mile Run Trail improvements. I may miss something. I ride that actually quite a lot, so I'm familiar with it. What needs to be done with it? I think I wasn't quite sure what improvements are being looked for.
So again, as I understand the concept, and you read that section, so hopefully you can visualize it going through there. As you come up and you're approaching the new, where it peels off from being effectively a wide sidewalk on South Glebe and peels off near the 2 new residential buildings that were constructed, and then goes down off on its own right away before passing by the water pollution control plant. at that bridge over the run you're basically a wide sidewalk, but perhaps not as wide as one might like, literally right up against the roadway at South Glebe on the south side of the roadway. On the north side of the roadway, approaching the bridge and on the bridge itself, there is an on-street parking lane, which is fairly generous. And so the concept, as I understand it, is to reconfigure that section of roadway, presumably to borrow from the generous parking lane and allow greater width on the south side of the roadway for the trail itself in that location. So, I mean, again, the challenge with all these is coming in early. There's still conceptual stuff and things that need to be done that would go into a final application. So it is a balancing act between making sure the information gets out early versus how much application development we can bring forward before generating these ideas. So I encourage the project managers that one of the things that will need to go into a final application is a graphic showing the existing typical section as well as the planned future typical section as part of the application process. So.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's not the actual trail itself, but sort of connecting to it or connectors to it. There's only one spot that's really right on 4 Mile One Drive. It's it's after it goes underneath the bridge, it comes up again, then it gets right up against 4 Mile Run Road, and then it diverges again to separate sidewalks and bike paths. So I could see that being done where the bridge goes over the one little stream.
Yeah, it's the bridge over Long Bridge.
And stream.
Right.
Right. So that the idea would be create a second bridge there. It's dedicated to the bike path.
No, that was my first thought also, and so I double checked with the folks in our planning and capital projects management section. It is not to create a second bridge a la Arlington Road. It is to simply widen the sidewalk that's on the existing bridge by reconfiguring the right of way to allow for a wider sidewalk.
So narrowing the traffic lanes then.
Well, I think the idea would be to borrow from the parking lane on the north side of the roadway rather than narrowing the travel lanes. But again, it's a concept at this point.
Yeah, because the trail is on the south side, and there's an actual median there.
Correct.
So that's going to be I can see that's going to be pretty complicated there.
Sure, okay. It's not a simple restriping, especially with the median there on the bridge. So
exactly. Okay, I understand it now. Yeah, and it is a bad spot there with pedestrians and bikes and traffic going very fast going by. It's not the most comfortable biking spot. So I get that. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Awesome, great. So I just wanted to speak to this as chair because this is kind of a weird flow for us. This is not a typical action or a typical info. So any comments that you have right now about the projects, let's go ahead and get those out. But I do also want to give commissioners time to sit with this list and think, especially because we did not have this presentation in advance. We didn't have a report in advance. I certainly don't want anybody feeling like they need to make a snap reaction to this idea list, having just seen it in the last 10 minutes. So with that said, a couple things I wanted to say. I think the South George Mason Drive bike lane project sounds fantastic. That definitely aligns with the bicycle element of the master transportation plan and would certainly improve access to Wakefield High School, which is a great idea. It also nicely parallels 395, so I think it fits well into the idea of the program. I certainly would like to see that portion of 4 Mile Run Trail improved, but I think its nexus with 395 is a little bit more tenuous, and I kind of wonder to what extent that might hurt the project as it goes into the grant process. I think the 395 corridor TDM is a great idea. I think we should pretty much always have a TDM request into these kinds of programs. That they seem to do well in my experience in these grant programs. I think getting operating money for the Pentagon commuter store is a great idea. I will say I have some concerns about the Army Navy Drive Transit Center. This is a large capital project that I don't feel has ever been appropriately shown to the public. You know, I keep a pretty close eye on transit projects and transportation projects in the county. And other than knowing vaguely where it is, I couldn't tell you what it's trying to accomplish or how likely it is to accomplish that. So I would certainly caution the county about applying for a grant for this project before it's gone through some sort of public engagement process. And hopefully the environmental documentation, the preliminary re-engineering, if that needs to happen to update the design from 2015, would be a good opportunity to do that. Because I definitely have questions about, you know, this transit center. Are these buses that currently serve the Pentagon? Or are these buses that currently serve Pentagon City? What are the advantages of serving at this site versus where the buses currently are? Is this because we need expansion? These are all questions that I don't feel that I have the answers to, and so I'm sure that a good chunk of the public is similarly in the dark. Any other commissioners want to weigh in? Beyond this, you're certainly welcome to. I would encourage you all to email me comments, and I will bring them together to give to staff at such time as is appropriate. Commissioner Clement. Commissioner Clement, if you're speaking, I think you're on mute because I can't hear you.
Yeah, I would concur with you with your remarks. Certainly projects that are closer to the 395 corridor sound like they're better candidates for grant money. Also regarding the transit center, at this time, because we really don't know how long it's going to take us to get out of this crisis mode, the projects that should be emphasized are those that I see on this chart that emphasize bike trails, because we really don't know what demand is going to be for bus service for a long time. We really don't know. And so I wouldn't want to spend a lot of money on projects the demand for which is uncertain going into the future. But the bike projects, we know there is now a very large and growing demand.
Thank you, Commissioner Clement. Commissioner Buck.
I'm going to speak up a little bit for the transit center. I also have never seen a design for it. My understanding, though, is that this is the last domino to fall to complete the current plan of the full exclusive routing of the Metroway. And I did not know that design was done, and it's been sitting. And I'd love to see progress. I'd love to see plans. I'd love to hear just an update of where the Metroway is. But if there is anything that helps to jumpstart the ultimate completion, A, of the Metroway, and B, perhaps in conjunction with the Pentagon City study, taking a look at Hayes Street, which is, as far as I know, planned for some sort of exclusive lanes for at least that northern section. I'd love to see it. I see the nexus clearly between the need to enhance transit service and, in this case, transit facilities and a terminal for the Pentagon. I think certainly there's a ton of unknowns here, and with a grant program that is this quick of a payout, I can certainly understand the reticence to sort of commit to it. But I certainly see the value in it, particularly as it really does have the nexus to the 395. The other ones I certainly have no objection to. They're great. But in the future, I'd love, you explained the RD-87 situation very well, Mr. Roisman. I'd love to see sort of in the future some strategizing about how we can use this somewhat unique bird of an operating grant program to punch up transit service when that is the environment is ripe for that.
If I may, just to respond to Commissioner Buck's comment, just for the record, the transit center is a WMATA project that the county would either take the lead applicant or work as a co-sponsor with both them and Washington Headquarters Service because it's on Department of Defense land. But it is the completion of the transitway is independent of the transit center project. The county is advancing it both along 12th Street as well as along Army Navy Drive with the Complete Street project, and so that project is moving along. I do not have a detailed update on it for this evening. I'm sure that other folks from the Transit Bureau would be happy to provide that at a future meeting. But it is the transitway completion is independent of the transit center. So.
Great, thank you. All right, I am not seeing any other hands up right here from other commissioners. So I do want to thank you for coming out, Mr. Roisman. Do you have another presentation?
I have
right
another
after this,
item,
though,
but in the interest of technical difficulties, what I'm going to do, if it's okay with you and with Mr. Best, I'm actually going to log out, clean up whatever else is on my computer, and then log back in, and then attempt to bring up the other presentation. It is shorter, so hopefully it won't be an issue.
Sure.
Yeah,
Why don't we'll give the commission like a 3-minute break in case anybody needs to, grab a drink of water or take care of any other business like that, and we'll reconvene here in a few minutes. Hopefully with slides sorted.
And Rich, I have a question for you. I have you down for 2 more items. I have
No, the 2 items are combined into one, Mr. Best. So
terrific.
I'll be back shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll take a 3-minute break.
Your slides look much better now, Mr. Roisman.
Excellent. Whenever we're ready to resume, I will go ahead.
Great. I'll give the commission at least 1 more minute so as not to surprise anybody by cutting our break short.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Reisman, we've given everybody the full 3 minutes that I said, so whenever you're ready, feel free to get started.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second information item I have for you this evening is the call for projects for fiscal year 2027 CMAQ and RSTP, and I will explain those acronyms on the next slide. Again, just to make sure everyone is aware of the time shift here. For NVTC, we're talking about funding awards for fiscal 22 and 23. Here we're talking about the next year in a 6-year cycle, the way these funds are programmed, and in this case, it is fiscal year 2027. Again, for those who may not already be aware, CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Program, RSTP, Regional Surface Transportation Program, although officially now it is the regional portion of the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. But that's not nearly as nice off the mouth as RSTP. So we've retained that nomenclature. Both of these programs provide federal aid for a wide variety of transportation programs and projects. They are 80-20 federal share with a 20% match requirement, but since fiscal 2006, the Commonwealth of Virginia has provided the 20% match for our applications, and we thank them for that. In Northern Virginia, the annual solicitation and programming of both CMAQ and RSTP funding is handled by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. Again, different than the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission we were just talking about in the previous presentation. NVTA's project recommendations are subject to approval by the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Following approval, those projects are included in the VDOT and DRPT 6-year improvement programs, depending on the nature of the project or program. And this is an annual solicitation looking at a roving 6-year window where the next solicitation is for the final year of the upcoming 6-year improvement plan. We have a little bit of interruption because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So NVTA does this as an annual solicitation, and they approved our recommendations for fiscal 26 CMAQ and RSTP recommendations in February 2020. Then the pandemic went, and CTB has not yet adopted a new 6-year improvement plan. So we are actually still operating under the fiscal 20 to 25 SIP at those funding levels. The Commonwealth has announced that they will be doing a partial SIP update probably by December, only on selected funding programs. It's not clear if CMAQ and RSTP will be part of that update or not. Then starting in January, they will begin the update for the fiscal 22 to 27 SIP. But NVTA is proceeding with their annual application process on schedule. So again, we're looking at fiscal 27 allocations of CMAQ and RSTP money. Combined Northern Virginia CMAQ and RSTP funding is estimated between $70 million and $80 million per fiscal year. Based on historical data, Arlington can reasonably expect up to around 10% of the regional allocation, and close to 90% of the county's allocation goes to fund the operating budget of Arlington County Commuter Services and all of their brands that you're familiar with, Mobility Lab, ATP, all the TDM programs that people know and recognize under the Commuter Services brand. Most of that money comes from CMAQ and RSTP, primarily CMAQ. The remaining funds in any given year rotate between a handful of other projects, traffic signal optimization, capital bike share, and transportation system management / integrated corridor management, which also is a traffic engineering and operations based project. So this is a little unusual, and I've sort of slapped cells on a graphic so the lines don't completely add up, but hopefully this one is much more readable than my last presentation since it's not flickering. But we're looking at a 7-year window here instead of a 6-year window because of the pause in approvals at the state level due to the pandemic. So what is in the slightly blurry graphic without the blue columns are the existing allocations for Arlington County for CMAQ and RSTP for fiscal 21 through 25. Those are in the approved, adopted 6-year improvement plan from the Commonwealth. The column marked FY26 plan with the star on it represents what was approved by the NVTA and transmitted to the state, but was not approved by the Commonwealth Transportation Board because they did not act on a newly adopted SIP as they normally would have before June 30th of this year. We expect those to go through whenever the SIP is updated. And then the far right column is what we are bringing forward for information this evening. This is the proposed draft request that the county would submit to the NVTA. Again, the bulk of the money, $7.5 million, is for commuter services. And based on where we are in sort of the alternating cycle, we're looking at a request of $350,000 for capital bike share. Typically, that is for either historically has been for system expansion. It's now moving toward maintenance. One thought for future rounds as they come forward would be sort of an improvement in terms of acquiring e-bikes for the system, rather e or e-assist bikes for the system, as part of an improvement for capital bike share that could be funded using this funding source. And then $700,000 in RSTP for the TSM ICM work being done by our traffic engineers. In this one, there is a link to the 2019 board report that went in that has detailed project descriptions of all of these projects, more than I can show here. So as with the previous item, we are asking, we'll hear comments this evening. We're also asking for written comments from the TC by the 13th, again, back through Mr. Best. The timeline's a little bit different here. We are likely to return for TC action on this item at the next scheduled TC meeting, which is currently November 23rd. With that in mind, we would then go forward for county board action to transmit these priorities to the NVTA in December 2020. The applications are due to the NVTA on January 15th of 2021. The backup emissions worksheet for CMAQ projects to document the impact of the projects on air quality are due to the authority on January 29th. And the final deadline for county board resolutions to be submitted to the NVTA as support is February 19th of 2021. That concludes this presentation. Let me unshare and take questions from commissioners.
Thank you again, Mr. Roisman. Let's see here. All right, Commissioner Buck has said in the chat that he will be out of this discussion in order to avoid any potential appearance of conflict of interest. Totally understandable. Do commissioners have any comments at this time on the proposed grant applications or questions for Mr. Roisman? All right, I will go ahead and say, Mr. Roisman, are you able, I know you're like the grant guy, not necessarily the person who knows any of these projects or the specific details, but can you talk to any extent about what gets done with that integrated corridor management, transportation system management money?
I can tell you sort of what historically has been done, although I think the nature of the project is changing. Historically it was for non-signal ITS infrastructure improvements, that back of the signal system. So it could be travel monitoring, additional cameras. In some cases it was for fiber backbone. As I said, the nature of the project is changing, and we are actually hoping to inquire and get a little more detail on what would be done, at this point in fiscal 2027 from our folks in traffic engineering and operations. So I think there needs to be a little bit more meat on the bones to clarify that for purposes of the application.
Great. Yeah, the only comment that I would have at this time, though certainly hope to add some more detail in written in the future, is that I've always wondered a bit about what we spend that money on and questioned its effectiveness and its efficacy. CMAQ and RSTP are limited pots that can do a lot of good, and I've often wondered if we could be doing more good with that money than what we're doing with it in the TSM and ICM bucket. So that is my main comment at this time. And I'm not seeing any other questions or hand raises at this point. Well, I just raised my own hand by accident. That was smooth. Great. So I think that means we get to thank you for coming out and speaking to us. And commissioners, any additional thoughts that you have on those grant requests, please follow up with me via email, and I will submit the requested written comments to staff by the deadline listed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I sign off, I'm going to attempt to post both PDF files into the chat window for the meeting. If for some reason that doesn't work, or otherwise I will also email them directly to Mr. Best for dissemination.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
And our next item is item number 6. This is 101 South 12th Street site plan. This is the site plan action. I'll turn it over to the applicant for a overview.
This up. Beginning. Thank you all, commissioners, for having us here tonight. My name is Robert Vaughn. I'm with the development group of JBG Smith. We have a relatively short presentation that provides background on our application for 101 12th Street, which is a 9-story office building located at the north end of Crystal City. In terms of the siting, as I mentioned, it's at the north end of Crystal City, approximately adjacent to the intersection between Crystal Drive and 12th Street, along with the Long Bridge Embarcadero coming down. The site area is generally outlined in yellow here, and it is currently improved as a passive green space. In terms of the development program, the application is seeking to rezone the site to CO Crystal City with a height of approximately 110 feet. It is primarily an office building with 234,000 square feet and 2 small retail spaces comprising 5,000 square feet at the ground floor on 12th Street. There is 241 parking spaces provided as part of the application. And we'll talk more about that in further slides, and 51 long-term bike parking spaces. In terms of building architecture, as you can see from the rendering spinning around the building, the architecture is primarily comprised of a punch window and metal panel rhythm that transitions to a curtain wall along the east side of the project, which will front onto future Gateway Park. Looking on Crystal Drive north towards the view of the Washington Monument, you can see Crystal City Lofts in the background. You can see that transition that is intended to satisfy the architectural feature requirement of the sector plan, and how this will help to highlight that view shed looking north. You can also see more views of the project across Roach's Run from the GW Parkway, and then also the outdoor dining space that we have programmed at the southeast corner of the building that will potentially connect to the future green space. In terms of the site plan, the project is primarily a rectangular tower sitting above a single-story podium. The podium is it's only manifests itself at the north end of the site, primarily due to the elevation change that occurs between 12th and 10th. As part of this project, we are proposing to build new South Ball Street, which would provide a vehicular connection between 10th and 12th. We are also proposing to reconfigure the existing cul-de-sac that provides vehicular access to the Crystal City Lofts project. As I mentioned, a key component of the existing site characteristics that led many of the design decisions was the 13 feet of elevation change that occurs between 12th Street going down towards 10th Street. And that creates a situation where the single level of below-grade parking that is being proposed with the project at the southern end is fully buried and then becomes exposed as you move north across the site. In terms of the garage access and garage plan, the entry comes off of the reconfigured cul-de-sac. We also have a pedestrian entrance coming into the backside of the building that provides access to the bicycle room, the locker rooms, and the tenant fitness center. And we also have a stairwell that leads up to a private tenant terrace that sits on the first level. The ground floor plan provides primary tenant access coming off of 12th Street. The 2 small retail spaces that I indicated are on the southeast and southwest corners of the project, comprising approximately 5,000 square feet. And loading for the project is coming off of the new proposed South Ball Street. In terms of bicycle parking, the current plan includes 51 long-term spaces provided inside the building and 18 short-term spaces provided along the site perimeter. As I mentioned earlier, the long-term bicycle parking is accessed off of the rear of the building via the 10th Street connection, and the short-term spaces are accessed both along 12th Street and along 10th Street. Vehicular parking is provided at 1 space per 1,000 square feet for both the office and retail. We do own the adjacent building at 201 12th Street, and a strategy that we have pursued as part of this project is to use the existing excess spaces located at 201 12th Street in order to minimize the amount of new parking that we would need to construct. All 6 of the retail spaces required will be provided within the new 101 12th Street garage. Looking at the breakdown in a little bit more detail, the single level of below grade parking currently provides approximately 68 parking spaces. The balance of the requirement in order to achieve a 1 per 1,000 square feet will be satisfied through existing parking at the 201 12th Street garage. And through site plan conditions, we will be required to provide a legal agreement that stipulates that those spaces will be reserved for the future office project. Touching a little bit about the street sections, the 12th Street streetscape is shown here with a rendering on the right-hand side of the page, showing how it is likely to interact with the architecture landing at the ground level. We have also worked with staff to incorporate a pickup and drop-off space close to the intersection between 12th and the new South Ball Street in order to accommodate short-term deliveries that might be accessing the future office building or the retail. And in terms of the cul-de-sac replacement, one of the items that staff identified early on as a potential opportunity was to reconfigure the existing cul-de-sac and reduce the amount of impervious area, clean up some of the vehicular circulation with the new garage connecting to it, and add opportunities for both plantings and bioretention. So the rendering up at the right is taken as if you were standing within that reconfigured cul-de-sac looking east, and you can see that we have some boardwalk elements and expanded plantings. We have also worked with staff to accommodate additional pickup and drop-off spots that are primarily intended to serve the Crystal City Lofts building. And then this is a rendering shown on the left-hand side of the page. Looking south, you can see the grade change as you transition going up towards 12th Street, along with new sidewalks and street trees. And then I believe Bowman will jump in to talk through some of the details of the proposed street sections.
Great, sure. Thank you very much, Robert. A couple things here. So basically on 12th Street, the main thing is that the face of curb to face of curb distance is going to remain exactly as it is today, which is to say the pavement stays in its present configuration. It varies between 44 and 49 feet. It's 49 feet where there's those 2 little parking spaces on the opposite side of the street, but basically it's a 44-foot section. And we will have a varying distance of the clear sidewalk between 10 and 8 feet. We have enhanced streetscape with 7.5-foot wide planting strips now. And you can see there's a little bit of extra space on the right side towards the new building. It varies between 6.5 to 9 feet or so of additional hardscape and landscape areas. There'd be landscape buffers that were shown in the previous rendering. Next slide, please. On 10th Street, so this is the area that Robert was just talking about as far as reducing that cul-de-sac pavement area. We've taken that cul-de-sac from what is 90 feet across down to about 29.5, depending upon where you are for measurements here. And actually, this is a little bit to the west. You see the section is cut on the west side there of 10th Street. So there's 2 parking spaces right there in the street. And if we go to the next slide, please. So now you're in the middle of the cul-de-sac, what had been the cul-de-sac, and you see there are 2 10-foot travel lanes. Robert mentioned the pickup drop-off area at the head of that there. And basically, we've taken about 2/3 of the pavement out of this scenario here. We put in bioretention, green areas, planting, and some sidewalks to get you directly from 10th Street. If you were to walk from 10th Street due east, you'd walk through this area along some sidewalks and come out to those pathways and ultimately to the park on the east. Next slide, please. This is the new South Ball Street. So South Ball Street is going to consist of 2 10-foot travel lanes and gutter pans for a total of 23 feet face of curb to face of curb, 2 8-foot clear sidewalks on either side, 5.5-foot planting strips on either side. There's some additional green space on the west side, which is where it says 10-foot grass there. And that sort of started to butt up against the existing garage of the building Robert had mentioned earlier as well. The big thing here also is, as Robert mentioned, working with staff towards the bottom of this, we now do have about a 38.5 or 39-foot pickup drop-off space, which did not exist before. So that's a good spot right by the front door there. Next. Transportation overview.
So John, I think I'll take it from here. So this is Dan Van Pelt with Grove Slate. I think Robert did a great job of walking you through the site itself, and then John talked about the street section. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit and talk about the transportation network itself. So I think from a overview standpoint, I think all probably know where the site is located. It's shown here on the image to the right. It's well situated to take advantage of many of the modes that are afforded the site. We've got 2 Metro Rail stations, VRE, bus routes, and a bike and ped network. And we're going to talk about each one of those as we go forward here. So next slide. So it is a well-connected pedestrian network. You've got access to the Crystal City Metro station, the multimodal center, the BRE station, the retail that's along Crystal Drive, and there's additional retail that's coming to the neighborhood, Long Bridge Park. And then with the site redeveloping, you're going to have improved sidewalks and streetscape surrounding the site, additional connectivity and porosity through the site with the new South Ball Street and connections that are proposed. The site's very walkable, has a walk score of 84, so many of your daily needs can be done by walking from the site. And as we talked about, there's neighborhood serving retail, and will be future additional retail in the neighborhood. Next, please. Switching to transit, there are 6 bus stops within a quarter mile radius. There are 15 bus routes, many of them Metro bus, but the Metroway also serves this area. You have ART, Loudoun County Commuter, Omni Ride. Those are all shown and illustrated there on the right. Again, Crystal City Metro Station, Pentagon City Metro Station. There are similar walking distance actually from this site. Crystal City is just slightly closer. Both have blue and yellow line service. And we have the planned Metroway extension that will go along Crystal Drive and 12th Street. Next slide. With regard to the bicycle facilities, there are bike lanes along Long Bridge Drive, Crystal Drive, South East Street. There are 2 Capital Bike Share stations located within a quarter mile. And there's a number of planned improvements. There's the bike lanes. They'll be on Army Navy Drive as part of that Complete Street project. We have shared bike lanes coming on 12th, separated bike lanes on South Clark and Eads. And I think one of the things that we're pretty excited about in this area is the new protected intersection at South Eads and 15th Street. Next, please. A multimodal transportation assessment was performed for this project. The intersections that were included in that were 10. They're shown here on the image on the right. Incorporated the new South Ball Street connection. And we scoped the study with the county before we moved forward, as we do with all of our transportation studies. Our study found that there were no mitigations that were needed as part of the capacity analysis, actually focusing on the vehicular aspects of the project. And then as far as any of the non-auto impacts, those can be mitigated through the enhanced site design elements that Robert talked through earlier in the implementation of a transportation management plan. And that's my next slide. So the TMP will include really 5 elements: the participation in funding, facilities and improvement, carpool and van pool, promotion services and policies, and performance monitoring. And those have been will be further detailed in the site plan conditions. I think with that, I turn it back over to Robert.
So we also wanted to touch on open space commitments and sustainability at the end of this presentation. So as part of the PDSP, the phase development site plan that was approved by the county board this past March, the bonus density and community benefits associated with this site were outlined as part of that approval. A key component was the fee dedication of Park 2. Gateway Park is identified in the sector plan, that we will be fee dedicating approximately 55,000 square feet of open space to the county. So you can see the open space is primarily comprised of 2 spaces that are bisected by the existing Long Bridge Drive. Long Bridge Park. There's a large space that is currently improved as a passive green space at the south end of that, and then there will be additional park space that sits on the east side of our project. One of the items I did want to touch on, Park Space 1, which is identified in the sector plan, is North Gateway Plaza. That is shown in our block plan as being provided with future development that would occur. However, in consideration, we have agreed to improve the existing passive green space that sits at the intersection of 10th and Long Bridge as part of this project. And regarding sustainability, we have gone back and reviewed with the team the commitments, working through the SPRC process, and have agreed to a current commitment that the building will achieve a LEED Gold certification. And we have also agreed to a 15% energy reduction over ASHRAE, which is primarily achieved through the installation of a 60 kilowatt photovoltaic array on the roof. And with that, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much. Is there also a staff presentation on this item?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Chairman Slett. This is Robert Gibson from Arlington County Transportation. I am going to try to share my screen here, and I'm not sure if that's going to work. So let me do that now. And this is always the fun part. Are you seeing a full screen on the slides just to make sure we're getting the right information to you? Okay,
now
very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Robert. The project here is located in the northern portion of Crystal City. It is the development of an existing open space that was planned as part of the Crystal City sector plan for development. It is a portion of, oops, I am somehow jumping ahead. I don't know how that's going on. The area in red represents the general project area. The area in red here represents site plan 229, which is the original site plan for this area. It is the existing 8-story office building, which is approximately 321,000 square feet. It has a massive 4-level underground parking garage with 912 parking spaces. As I mentioned before, the Crystal City sector plan identifies this site as a development location. The zoning for the site is currently a mixture of CO 1.5, and the site is glumped as low office apartment hotel. The proposal before you today will rezone the site to CO Crystal City. It includes the adoption of the Crystal City block plan, the amendment to site plan 229 to break out the site area, and to share the off-site parking, along with the new site plan, which Robert went through in detail, but is generally a 234,000 square foot office building with 5,000 square feet of retail, 1 level of below-grade parking, the construction and dedication of a new South Ball Street, modifications for parking, mixed use ratio, density, and density exclusions. The applicant's proposing a LEED Gold building, along with the substantial open space dedications they spoke about earlier. One of the most significant issues that was discussed in the project was the dedication of the new South Ball Street connection, its public benefit and its overall need to be constructed. So staff absolutely took the discussions from the public process to heart and started from the scratch, from the beginning, to look at it, whether or not this was necessary, and then not just to look at whether or not it was something that was identified in our plans and policies. It was identified in and is identified in the Master Transportation Plan and the Crystal City Sector Plan. The sector plan speaks to it specifically on page 61. But the new connection will provide not only building access to the trash and loading, it is going to be critical in providing additional connectivity to the northern portion of Crystal City here. And without this connection, we would not be able to otherwise reconfigure the traffic circle at the end of 10th Street. This provides a critical relief valve for emergency vehicles. We really did take the recommendations of the sector plan into consideration and did not want to oversize this street. So it is technically smaller than most urban center local streets, as it does not have parking on both sides. It's a pretty steep grade, 16 feet of grade change across the site. But we do believe that it does still need to support some of those activities. And that's why through the process, we identified the 10-foot or the almost 40-foot pickup and drop off space. That pickup and drop off space, along with the street itself, is very useful from a multimodal perspective because Crystal Drive is planned to be the northern lane of Crystal Drive going westbound is planned to be a transit-only lane in the future. So we do not want to encourage people stopping in that lane to pick up and drop off or otherwise wait. Some of the things that we did in the design of this, it was critical to make sure that it was designed safely. So the existing garage access to the building to the south is basically lined up with this to create a lined up four-way intersection. And then one of the big questions was, what is the overall public benefit of this? Everybody's been calling this a public benefit. The county board identified it as a public benefit as part of the PDSP that we'll talk about in a moment. But this expands the local street network. It will support vehicles, pedestrian, bicycle access, along with emergency vehicle circulation. So as we said, it does improve public safety. We've talked about this in the site plan review process. This area is actually kind of unique in the sense that some of the portions north of here are not well connected. The only access is from Longbridge Drive. In the very rare instance that an incident occurs at 12th and Crystal Drive, the emergency response route would be about 3 minutes longer and would require going on to either 395 or the Pentagon Reservation to access portions of Longbridge Park and or the development just to the north of this. So there's multiple reasons that we feel that this is an overall public benefit. Many of these reasons are inherent to the reason that we want to increase our street network as a principal goal of the Master Transportation Plan. And so the public streets do have public benefits. But we also did hear a lot of concerns about this and wanted to address some of those and make sure that those were considered in the process and not just heard, but also considered. So the first concern that we heard was about the existing and potential safety issues of the addition of this new street. We did a review of the crash history along 12th to see what was going on in the past as far as safety. We did not find that this area was a significant area for high frequency of crashes. We also found that it did not have a high severity of the crashes that occurred. We saw that the crashes occurred throughout the day and night and throughout various weather conditions. There were pedestrian involved, bicycle involved, and motorist involved crashes. And so it is the county's goal to progress towards our Vision Zero goals. And so we do take this idea of safety to heart as we look at this. Our county engineers have looked at the design of this street to ensure that it adopts best practices for intersection separation. It doesn't create sight distance issues, and we have found that all the design aspects are within best practices, and we will continue to review the design and refine the design through final engineering to ensure that its connections are safe. The second element was changes to traffic patterns that could be caused by the addition of this. There was some concern that this would become a new commuter route to access 395. We looked at the MMTA that the applicant discussed earlier and looked at those traffic patterns along with the level of service. All 10 of the intersections studied by the applicant had level of service B or better, which is extremely high quality level of service. And what we found was that while this street could have a diversion of traffic, the existing levels of service would not suggest that there's a need for people to avoid highly congested locations such as 10th and, or excuse me, 12th and Longbridge Drive. The eastbound left turn from 12th is a very heavy volume turn. So there is some chance that people could go down and around. We don't expect that to occur because of the added length in trip that it would cause motorists and time, given the level of service, but that's a possibility. But that left turn at Ball Street would still be a very safe left turn. We also looked at whether or not the design of the street was the overall right design. So we looked at the street typologies that could be applied and what type of street we should develop here. With the grade change that occurs and the adjacent uses, the legacy building that is there today at 201 12th Street doesn't have anything that fronts onto what would be Ball Street. And this building is largely only fronting its loading dock onto that. And so because of that, there's not a lot of activation that's going to occur on Ball Street. And for that reason, we didn't think it was an appropriate location for sort of investing more in a pedestrian priority or shared street. Rather, we are providing very substantial sidewalks along this street on both sides of the street to support pedestrian circulation. In addition, our main pedestrian focus is the promenade and the Esplanade and Longbridge Park. So that's kind of where our center of social gathering is. So we didn't see that this was a needed sort of enhanced gathering location that a shared street or a pedestrian priority street might warrant. We also looked at the time of day, at possibilities of time of day restrictions or limiting access on the street. And in that, we really felt that limiting access to the street would sort of overall degrade its otherwise public benefit to the public as a public street. And so I'll leave that for questions later in our discussion. And then I wanted to frame this overall discussion with the PDSP that the county board approved recently. That PDSP covers 3 sites, the 2300 Crystal Drive, 1900 Crystal Drive, and 101 12th Street. The 1900 Crystal Drive site has been approved as a final site plan. And now we are looking at 101 12th Street. The county board looked at a PDSP for these 3 sites to be able to maximize and establish the maximum amount of density that could be achieved across the 3 sites, but also to provide a holistic framework to achieve sector plan goals and community benefits across the sites. And so as each of these is approved and built, various community benefits come online. The applicant is required to provide specific community benefits with each of the 3 projects. Collectively, they can achieve 1 million square feet of additional density. This is all permitted under the zoning ordinance. And once again, it is to maximize the community benefits directly related to the overarching and site-specific sector plan goals. The applicant talked about the open space being dedicated, and I think I had a math problem, so they're identifying 55,000 square feet of open space dedicated. In addition, the applicant's providing $300,000 in contribution to the county to support planning efforts for this location. And the final community benefit associated with the site is the dedication and construction of South Fall Street. I want to thank everybody who's participated in this public process. This was our first project to go through a fully virtual public process. We had 2 community engagement sessions, followed by a virtual SPRC meeting, and this Transportation Commission on the 29th, and then we'll have County Board hearing on the November 14th, and the Planning Commission hearing between the 2 next week. Considering the overall project, the county and its overall community benefits, the county is recommending approval of all items outlined in the staff report: the rezoning, the block plan, the site plan amendment, and the site plan for the new building on site plan 456. Thank you for letting me present, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Now I have to unshare my screen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Best, do we have any speakers on this item?
We do not.
All right. Honestly, a little bit surprised, but okay. First, I want to jump to Commissioner Buck. He has been Transportation Commission's representative on Site Plan Review Committee for this site. Mr. Buck, if you can give us any overview of what was discussed or worked through in Site Plan Review, that would be great.
Sure. I'm going to discuss both kind of what I heard out of the community on a couple of issues that the applicant and Mr. Gibson touched on, and also a few issues that I raised that weren't raised in these presentations. The first is about the sidewalks along 12th Street. Representative Van Hine of the Pedestrian Committee, who I'm sure many of you know, raised the issue a number of times about the clear space on the sidewalk along 12th. That is currently, for those who don't know, it's a nice, generous 10-foot trail that connects to the Long Bridge Trail. It's a popular jogging route. It's as the applicant's transportation consultant, Grove Slade, noted, it is the primary bicycling route for westbound cyclists because of its width and its lack of adjacent activity and its connectivity to the trail. I want to thank Grove Slade for actually doing that sort of deeper thinking into the circulation around there. You'll note in the presentation, and I went back to the page to verify again with designs. From the start, this has been proposed at the sector plan's minimum guidance for sidewalk width at 8 feet clear. During the SPRC process, there was a design revision that was made, and instead of widening the sidewalks, it eliminated some of the private clear space that was going to be adjacent to the building that was referred to as a flex zone and is now going to be used, I think, for vegetation or bioswales for wastewater treatment. So that was number one, is just the degradation of the sidewalk, not only in absolute width, but sort of the quality that users are going to experience by having that adjacent activity leading up to what is someday going to be a regional trail, and right now is already a very popular community amenity. Second was about the intersection with 12th and the new Ball Street. You'll notice the ramps point diagonally out into the street, which is kind of an accessibility fail. The corners are 20-foot radius. I just double checked that a few minutes ago. We had submitted comments asking for something to happen. There was an acknowledgement of those comments, but no revisions. I don't know what county design guidance says about corner radii for local streets, but 20 feet seems excessive. The ramps are certainly inaccessible to a degree. Well, not inaccessible, but certainly suboptimal. The street itself, I hope everybody had a chance to take a look at Ms. Fuller's letter regarding the new Ball Street. There is significant controversy about the inclusion of that street. Concerns are with the potential volume of diverted traffic and speed. It is a local street now. The street classification is going to remain local. And any sort of, I guess if you look at it on a plan set and say, well, it's a local street, but it's connecting to minor arterials with the potential for diversion. The traffic volumes certainly don't, I certainly agree with Mr. Gibson. They really don't point to a huge potential diversion issue, but I hope he would also acknowledge that in the age of Waze, a lot of our old sort of rules of thumb about what's going to cause a diversion and what isn't, we're struggling to keep up with that. A number of alternatives were discussed. Mr. Gibson hit on the idea of the shared street typology. I just want to take a minute to sort of explain kind of the rationale why that was brought up. The intent was to not only sort of encourage calmed traffic, but also provide kind of visual cues to say that Waze user or that casual person who wants to bypass the admittedly small queue at 12th and Longbridge to perhaps not. Other possibilities that were brought up were simply making the entrance to that local street a driveway apron type entrance rather than a simply at-grade street. That was verbally mentioned and acknowledged by staff as a potential solution, but it has not been adopted. Operational changes. There were, I believe, one way out was broached as a possibility, which will obviously in that AM westbound to northbound movement that would prevent that, but still maintain that primary public benefit of that redundant route, that fire access to Longbridge. My proposal was what's not shown in the MMTA. There is a DES capital project that is back underway, as far as I know, to create a new signalized intersection at 15th and Clark. My own anecdata of living locally says that is perhaps going to knock down that queue that Mr. Gibson mentioned. That it gets pretty substantial for that one movement that morning. Folks come east on 12th Street and they want to hang a left onto Longbridge. There's usually a pretty good queue of cars there, and you'll see that in the transportation analysis. It comes up as I think a 400-foot queue. A lot of people do tend to bypass that in anger, and I don't know if they cut through the 201 building now, if they would cut through Ball Street in the future. That is, I think, DES is correct that there is perhaps not a huge safety benefit or safety degradation to that, but certainly to Ms. Fuller's letter, I think the neighbors existing there who right now have a local street are concerned that this no longer becomes a local street in name only and instead becomes a diversion route. Finally, of course, the bike element of the master transportation plan. I bring it up every time. The existence of a study that is underway by DES staff was acknowledged in the staff report. DES is supposed to provide an update at the bike advisory committee next week on what's going on with that study. That I would hope results in some public space changes. Mr. Gibson can correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not see anything in the paperwork that acknowledges that the possibility that if that study recommends changes to 12th Street, that the public space plans associated with this site plan could or would be revised. I will save my editorial comments for later.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck, for that detailed update. It's a great to be able to summarize all of the prognostication and discussion and that has happened before with the neighborhood and with the other SPRC members. With that said, if commissioners have questions they want to ask of the applicant, questions they want to ask of staff, or comments on this site, please go ahead and raise your virtual hand or go ahead and chat to me in the chat. Commissioner Lantelmi, you were first. Go ahead.
Yes, I have just one quick question. I like the idea that this building will be sharing the overparked building next door, which means less parking than this building going up. I think we need to see more of that. I'm wondering whether, given the topography here, there'll be a direct connection between the two garages beneath the new Ball Street, or whether you'll have to walk from outside from one building to the other.
Yeah, given the number of utilities that need to run in South Ball Street and the elevations of the garages, we didn't pursue the idea of a tunnel connection particularly far. The idea would be that you would come out of 201 12th Street either on 10th Street or come out of the main building lobby up onto 12th Street and walk across the street.
That's fine. It's not that far. I don't think it's a concern. I was just wondering whether it was considered and whether it was part of the plan. I didn't remember that. So anyway, thank you.
Commissioner Raddick, you're next.
Mr. Gibson, you mentioned a 3-minute longer response time. I was wondering if you could explain that a bit. I didn't follow. I don't know if it was regards to if the street wasn't built or where it was in regards to.
Yes, so the issue would be is if for some reason, and this is a very, very slim chance, but around here we do have to plan for very unlikely things. If you were to have an incident that completely blocked 12th Street and Longbridge Drive, the emergency response vehicles would otherwise to get to Longbridge Park or the Boeing building or the residential building to the north would have to go through Pentagon City and then through the Pentagon Reservation and back down around, or along 395 to loop back down around to get through. So this street provides an additional way to get around that. I don't think that this is going to happen very often, but it is something that is important when it happens. And so that longer route through the reservation or 395 was estimated about 3 minutes longer.
Thanks.
Commissioner Rich.
Hello. Thank you so much for the very informative presentations. Quick comment or question for Mr. Van Pelt. If you'd like to bring back up your presentation and show us the transit facilities slide, that's what I'm going to be asking about. For the rest of the commissioners, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but in this slide, you showed us the locations of bus stops and of bus routes. This is not particularly useful information when understanding the transit connections to the site. What would be much more useful is an isochrone map showing us the locations that can be accessed from the site by transit, by walking, and by car, so that we can compare these four, and by bicycle. And I would just like to encourage you to do that next time that Grove Slade brings a presentation before the commission. Thank you.
If I could make a comment on that, I appreciate that feedback. I think that one of the things that has happened is our transportation studies have evolved over the years. And I think that as we all think more multimodally, the best way to review those modes, been doing this long enough that it wasn't that long ago where we actually really didn't do much of a multimodal review. And so your feedback is important so we can think about the best way to go about that.
Thank you, Mr. Van Pelt. I know we're all kind of finding our way towards a new multimodal transportation assessment and exactly what the best way is to present that information. So thank you very much. I wanted to jump in on something that Commissioner Buck brought up and go directly to Mr. Gibson about it. I know we have done some minor neighborhood streets in the past that did have a driveway apron-like entrance in order to kind of make it clear to commuters or those from out of the area that this was not like a main route that they should be driving on. Can you talk to the extent that that staff has looked at that, or if the applicant wants to weigh in on whether the extent to which that was considered and why it was not pursued?
So thank you for this opportunity. We did ask our engineers, and we've talked about it internally. I have to say that it was not, the answer was not a emphatic, there is no chance we would ever do this. It was simply that it was not the preferred outcome. We did look at it, we did discuss it. There is additional time to continue to design and evolve this. I do want to point out that we have brought up the angled ramps to the applicant and would continue to catch that and work to catch that through the final engineering review. So we absolutely share the concerns by Commissioner Buck about that issue and the community. So we are not done with this yet, and we will continue to evolve that. And I think the commission's comments on any design elements, staff could continue to consider as we look at the final design.
Thank you. That's very helpful, because I'm certainly, yeah, this is always one of those tough things. I 100% believe in the community benefit of building the extension of South Ball Street. I really think grid connectivity in this particular section is suboptimal right now, and we really need another street. But I do also understand the desire of people who live nearby to that they've got a little neighborhood street outside their building, and they would like it to continue to feel like a little neighborhood street and not all of a sudden have cut through commuter traffic coming down it. So I think staff has done a great job in tightening the belt as far as that cross section is concerned, and that goes a long way. I agree with staff that a pedestrian priority street is not the best call here. I think those work best when there are enough pedestrians to sort of assert their dominance in an area, and I'm just not convinced there are going to be enough pedestrians walking up and down this hilly connector street for that to really be a thing. And I certainly understand that the county has concerns about, any sort of unique paving treatment on a public street as far as snow plowing and maintenance and all that sort of thing. But I really think that driveway apron treatment, in addition to sort of giving pedestrians a clear priority who are continuing down 12th, that it would provide a clear signal to drivers that this is not their cut through street.
Chairman Slatt, one quick point that I forgot to mention.
Please.
We continue to look at the design of the street at the entrance there. And one thing you'll see is that pickup and drop off extends all the way through to the street to maximize its length. Normally we would have a curb extension shadowing on-street parking in a situation like this. We really felt that in this case, at least at this juncture, staff still has the option to put in that curb extension and narrow that crossing. But we're really concerned about providing enough length for like the Amazon truck delivering stuff or the UPS truck delivering stuff, that we wanted to be able to have that come in. And so I think one of the other issues was that with the way that engaged the intersection, the curb, the parking lane, the driveway apron design didn't feel quite right. But we do hear your point, and we'll continue to evaluate.
Thank you. Commissioner Lantelme, your hand's up. Commissioner Lantelme, you're muted again.
I'm unmuted now. Yeah, I want to just emphasize that I very much agree with what Commissioner Slatt was saying about the apron, the design of the South Fall Street, and having a driveway apron look there. The neighborhood was very, very concerned about this street, and I understand their concerns on it. I also agree that the street is the right thing to do here, that it is on the MTP, it is on the sector plan. I never like having just one way in and out of the neighborhood, which is what Long Bridge Road is. It's that one thing. It is a choke point, which I very much understand the need for alternative emergency accesses. But the neighborhood is right that we should not be encouraging traffic on the new street. It should be a local street. And I think the driveway apron is an elegant solution to that. It will very much discourage people from using it as a cut through, despite ways. But I think you can find a way to design that apron such that you can continue to have that extra pickup and drop off lane extend to its maximum. I think you need to go back and really take a hard look and make it work the right way, because I think this is the minimum thing that we can give that neighborhood in order to make that street not be amenable to being a cut through. So let's get off a high horse now, but as I said, I do concur with Chairman Slack.
Commissioner Wadsworth.
Yeah, actually, just sort of in a similar vein of what Commissioner Rich mentioned. I think when we look at all of this development in Crystal City, there's just so much happening. It's hard for us to evaluate this kind of thing building by building, street by street. So maybe when we look at this next time, if you all could, you did this a little bit at the end, but if you could provide a little more context of how this would fit into the overall plan and how it would look and operate in the end, that would really help our ability to kind of evaluate what the plan is here. So just some feedback on that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Buck.
As long as we're talking about the street, I think it's worth tossing around what was proposed by Ms. Fuller in her letter. This street is being provided as a public benefit as part of the PDSP package that was approved. At the time that this commission heard that package, I think even then, my memory is spotty, but I think at that time there was significant concerns expressed about this street. I know one of the reasons that I voted in favor of the package was a statement by county staff that regardless of what we decide to do with the street, we could even decide not to do the street, and conveying the property is a public benefit. And what was consistently told to the community was that if these benefits don't turn out to be benefits, they would be reviewed as part of the site plan. I would like to discuss whether or not this street, whether or not it's provided, and we're getting into really good design details. And I got to admit, I'm a little frustrated that we're doing this on the dais and we discuss design at length in SPRC, but transportation changes never seem to make it to plan revisions. Bird strikes and drainage and architecture and signature features and all of those things seem to result in changes through SPRC. We're seeing the same issues that were raised in the first SPRC process. So I would like to talk about whether or not this street should be counted as a community benefit. Community benefits, we have a literal definition of them. Do they provide a benefit to the community? But I think we have to say, a community benefit, the immediate community has a voice in that, and whether or not they count this as a true benefit. I don't think we've shown through this process a robust enough discussion of what that street looks like to convince the community that, again, down to these issues of diversion and speed, that those immediate residents are benefited by the presence of the street. And frankly, community benefits, each of our pet areas as community members get addressed, and this is our transportation benefit. I'm frankly a little frustrated that we're so up in the air on so many design elements having to do with transportation, except that we're going to be doing a street that the community is lukewarm about and we have significant design concerns with still.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. Sorry, I just want to give staff an opportunity. If staff or the applicant would like to respond to any of that, please feel free, but I also don't want you to feel like you have to. I feel like there weren't necessarily questions in there.
I do have a technical question, and maybe this is best a question for Mr. Best. Is there anything in the motions before us tonight where we are asked to validate that this street is part of a community benefit applicable to the site plan, or is that already baked through the PDSP process?
Yeah, actually, I would turn that back to Mr. Gibson. I'm really not, familiar with this this site.
So this is not Roslyn, where community benefits are stacked and calculated in the absolute formal manner. And so part of this is whether this is a capital C, capital B community benefits in Roslyn, or if this is a lowercase c, general community benefit. This is an issue you can recommend to the board to consider it one way or another. But ultimately, the real issue is, do you advance the street or do you not? Whether it's a community of benefit, I think there can be a lot of debate whether or not parks or whatever pet project or things that people have are community benefits to every user and everybody. That I will leave up to you to advise the county board on. As far as how we address things in the site plan process, I do want to point out that there was a lot of discussion about many transportation issues. Issues were heard, and not all issues are resolved in the manner that everybody gets happy with. We did have lengthy discussions about how to deal with the cul-de-sac at the end. That was a transportation element that did evolve through the process. I do want to point out that the sidewalk has evolved from being 8 feet along the entire length to 8 feet along the western edge to a 12-foot section at the eastern end, which will connect in with the public spaces. So there are elements that did change throughout the process, and I'll open it up to the commission for further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Commissioner Buck, did that elicit any further follow-up, or shall I move on to Commissioner Clement?
Move on.
Commissioner Clement, you're up. Commissioner Clement, you're muted.
I was impressed with Mr. Gibson's observation that there is a safety issue with respect to the creation of Ball Street. I don't live in Crystal City and I don't drive very often. So if I found myself in a situation at 12th and Longbridge whereby the intersection was blocked, I probably wouldn't know that I could get to where I was going on Crystal Drive by way of 395 or the Pentagon compound. I wouldn't be without a navigator in my car. I wouldn't be able to use either one of those facilities. So I think that Mr. Gibson has raised a legitimate safety issue, and to the extent that it does improve safety, it is a community benefit. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Clement. All right. Any other commissioner questions or comments on this site? All right, then just for sake of discussion, I will move that the Transportation Commission recommend approval of the SP number 229 site plan amendment and site plan number 456 site plan, along with the associated block plan and rezoning as outlined in our draft board report dated November 6th,
Second.
2020. All right, that is before us and seconded. Is there discussion on that motion or a motion to amend? Commissioner Buck.
I am raising my hand as a placeholder because I'm thinking on the fly. I did not come to this meeting prepared. I am concerned about yet again letting a site plan go to Planning Commission and County Board where we have technical concerns that have been raised and that haven't been resolved in writing in the staff report. And I do not believe that they will be raised to the board. They will not be documented without a resolution. So I would like to make a resolution that the Transportation Commission recommends to the county board that they provide guidance regarding compliance with the bike element of the master transportation plan, similar to that provided for 1900 Crystal Drive, guiding staff to amend public space plans should the Crystal City bicycle plan underway from DES recommend any facilities along the stretch of 12th Street.
Just to clarify, was that a formal motion?
That was a formal motion, as it were.
I was writing it down in the thoughts that it might be a formal motion, but I wanted to be clear. Does anyone second
I will
that?
accept any friendly amendments as
Doesn't
well on wording.
doesn't have to be an amendment to the current motion.
Yeah.
The current motion, not
Yes,
just a
this-
motion to
this
the
is-
motion.
This is as an amendment to the current motion.
Thank you.
Second the motion.
Who was the second? I'm sorry, I couldn't see who was speaking.
Audrey is seconding
you.
the motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Clement. And then just making sure I'm understanding properly, back when the board approved 1700, they directed staff to do this study of a protected bike lane network in the Pentagon City area, including on Crystal Drive. And there was basically a caveat in there that if something came out of that study that would require changes to the street frontage of 1700, that it would be incorporated into those final engineering documents, assuming it was done in time. This is trying to attach that same caveat to this site plan. Is that correct, Commissioner Buck?
That is correct.
Okay, great. A lot of
It's
backstory there. I
1900,
wanted
by the
1900, not 1700 Crystal Drive. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Lane, tell me, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm also wondering whether it would be useful to have an amendment that would state that we would want the new South Ball Street to be designed in a way that would visually minimize its attractiveness to cut through traffic. That's not a technical term. It's certainly fairly loosey-goosey, unfortunately. I'm certainly open to a better way to do that. I'm just sort of exploring whether there's a sense of this body that we would want to have something like that as guidance or what we're looking for out of the design of South Ball Street in light of the concerns of the neighborhood.
I would certainly support such an amendment, and I would love to see it, having the entrance to it have a driveway apron like thing as an example of a type of treatment that would do that. Commissioner Buck, it looked like you were trying to weigh in on that.
I also support that, but I was hoping we could deal with that via a separate amendment, simply because I want to make sure that the bike element language gets in there. And then I would absolutely, I think I would absolutely be supportive of at least a discussion about design iterations of both Ball Street and perhaps the intersection. And frankly, I'd like to discuss the community benefits issue as well.
Yeah, thank you. As a Robert's,
it's a little C, little B community benefit. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
as a Robert's rule point, we should deal with the amendment before us before any additional amendments get tacked on here. So Commissioner Price is making many hands to get the ability to talk here.
Okay, so we had a motion to approve or to move this forward, and now Commissioner Buck came out with his amendment to the motion. Commissioner Buck, could you please clarify what you're trying to achieve with your motion, so we're all kind of clear about what we're doing going forward?
Absolutely. So DES, another part of DES, has a small study underway to look at the bike network in Crystal City. That was prompted by a former site plan. They are going to, at some point, start engagement on what the bike network looks like throughout Crystal City, including Crystal Drive, including this street, including this frontage.
Right.
My own 2 cents opinion is that this street, with its one-way bike lane in street, that 7 feet of space that currently provides unprotected westbound travel for bicyclists, would be better apportioned to the sidewalk clear space to provide about 16 or more clear space feet for pedestrians and bicyclists to access the Long Bridge Trail in front of this site. I don't know if that's feasible, but if it is, if this study says that should be part of the long range plan, this site plan, the construction of it and the rehabilitation of public space is a free opportunity for the county to get that improvement done. And there's nothing in the site plan approval that's before us that provides any sort of formal acknowledgement that that study is underway, and that should prompt staff to reopen the public space plan and amend it should that study come out with some sort of recommendation along those lines.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Price?
Again, so what are we tabling? Do you want to table the discussion about this so it doesn't move forward, or we want to recommend that county board doesn't?
Now, the amendment that was offered basically just says that if
just an acknowledgement.
Let me talk. It says that if this bike network planning recommends changes to the streetscape in front of this building before this building is ready to be built, that those changes would be incorporated into the engineering plans. Let me get 2 questions in here that I think will help us as we are moving forward on this amendment. The first is to Mr. Gibson. Do you by chance have any update on staff's work on this bike network planning process that is supposed to go out to the public by December?
I know that the staff is continuing to advance this for discussion this winter. They are starting that with the very vanguard discussion with the pedestrian bicycle advisory committee next week, with more detail from the team that's working on that. I don't have the design. I don't have the detail on it, but I do know that we're continued to commit to respond to the board.
Thank you. And then a question for the applicant is, I know the applicant was open to incorporating those kinds of changes, assuming that they were ready in time for 1900 Crystal Drive. Is the applicant open to incorporating those sort of streetscape changes if warranted by this bike network study, if they are ready before this site moves to construction?
Yes, right. Without knowing the exact nature of what's being proposed, it's a little tough to fully commit. But if it's along the lines of kind of the ongoing discussions that we've had, right, on 1900 Crystal and on some other site plans, then yes, we would be open to that.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other discussion on this amendment? Okay, seeing no discussion on this amendment, we will vote on the amendment, which basically would amend the original motion, which is just the county manager's recommendation, to add a recommendation that the board provide guidance regarding compliance with the bike element at the MTP, similar to what was provided on 1900 Crystal. That basically, should the planning process for bike network in Pentagon City suggest changes are necessary to the streetscape, that the applicant be afforded the opportunity to incorporate them into construction, assuming they're ready before final engineering. All those in favor of that amendment, I will go down name by name because this is Teams and we're not in person. Commissioner Clement.
Aye. Yes.
Commissioner Raddick.
Aye.
Commissioner Bros.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelli.
Aye.
Commissioner Watson.
No.
Commissioner Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Rich.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Yeri.
Aye.
Did I miss anyone? Oh, myself. Yes. Did I miss anyone else besides myself? All right, that amendment is now incorporated into the original motion. Are there any additional amendments or conversation about the motion as amended? Commissioner Lantelmi, did you want to make a stab at amending this motion to make a recommendation about the design of Ball Street? Or Commissioner Buck, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I actually have some language I wrote up, having given a little bit of time. I move that the Transportation Commission recommend that staff be directed to design the new South Ball Street in such a way that it visually minimizes its attractiveness as a cut-through route, such as by at the intersection of South 12th Street.
Can you say the part after cut-through route? Because at least for me, your audio cut out a bit there in the middle.
Such as, by example, through a driveway-style apron at the intersection of South 12th Street. And I'm definitely open to different language.
Is there a second for that motion to amend this motion?
I'll second.
Commissioner Buck seconds. I will say that I support the motion to amend without further changes, but I'm open to other people's opinions.
I wanted to offer a friendly amendment to tack on a sentence. The staff is advised to examine ramp geometry and corner radii at the intersection of Ball and 12th as a part of such a design review.
That was ramp geometry and what?
And corner radii.
So, does anyone object to that being added to the existing motion to amend? Commissioner Price objects. I think that's what the hand raise means. Yes. Okay. So then it would have to be offered as a separate amendment that gets voted on. It can't be friendly added if anybody objects. I would prefer, I would say personally, oh, Commissioner Bros has her hand up. Sorry, I don't want to jump ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Bros.
No, I just wanted to ask Commissioner Lantelmi's amendment is this the one addressing the Crystal City group's concerns, right? That's what
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And their concerns about this is not a benefit. We're trying to do something that's going to make, asking them to review it and address it in a way that it's going to minimize any of the concerns that the community has about it. Is that what you're trying to address?
That's right. Yeah, they were concerned that this is going to turn into a major thoroughfare because of what they believe is inevitable cut-through traffic.
Right.
This will help address the issue of cut-through traffic.
Okay.
I do just want to clarify, since we were trying to speak to the Crystal City community's concerns without one of them here. Is a clear reading of the letter is that they have multiple concerns about Ball Street. One of them is that they don't think it should be counted as a benefit. They don't see the street as a benefit. Another is that they're concerned that it will create problems, that it will create a safety issue, that it will create cut-through traffic. I would say that Commissioner Lantelmi's motion is an attempt to address that second point, which is to ensure that it is not attractive as a cut through. I don't think anybody would say that it necessarily addresses the first point, which is that they don't think it's a benefit.
No,
and they
you're right. It doesn't address whether it's a community benefit, either capital C or a small c. That I think might be better with the Planning Commission to talk about that, because I'm not sure whether, for example, if they get additional density because of this, which is sort of the capital C, capital D community benefit. And that's information we can get at PC. I think that it does address safety. By minimizing cut through, you almost inevitably cut the amount of traffic, which increases safety. So I think you're really addressing 2 points here rather than just one.
Right. Commissioner Price.
I mean, from my read of the letter, it seems like the community doesn't want this street. They just don't. It's sort of like, again, I keep hearkening back to our conversation when they were building the Ham School and they were going to just build a street for the sake of building a street. And that's sort of the same argument here. They're building the street and they're wrapping in a safety concern into the construction of the street. If we're going to approve this, a street is a street. We build it. Either we tell them they can or we tell them we can. I think we're going down a road where we're trying to tell the engineering about what they should and should not be doing. And again, either we support them building a street or doing the extension of Wall Street, or we don't. I mean, to me, it's just that simple. I don't support the motion. The amendment, I apologize. But again, I think it's a good project. I'm just saying, I think we're going down a rabbit hole that we shouldn't be going down and dictating engineering.
Well, to respond to that, I don't think we're really dictating engineering. We're giving what our view of how the street should read, which I think is a design philosophical question. We're still giving the ultimate decision to the traffic people to figure that out. But I think it's appropriate for us to give a feeling for the way we feel this street should be designed. There are many ways to design a street, and I think it's appropriate for us to weigh in on that. And I think by doing so, we're taking into account the concerns of the neighborhood, while at the same time supporting the street, which is on the MTP and is part of the Crystal City Sector Plan.
Great. I respectfully disagree with you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this motion? Thoughts on this motion to amend? Let's stick to raising our hand, guys. Thank you, Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate my point from earlier that we discussed this at length in SBRC, down to design details, and the fact that discussion wasn't really captured in the staff report is, I think, why we're in this situation now of having to debate design language from the dais, which I don't like either. But I mean, the fact is, a driveway entrance to a local street is hardly unprecedented within the county. A 15-foot curb radius, as I mentioned earlier, is the baseline curb radius as dictated in the master transportation plan. Diagonal ramps, staff has acknowledged their problems. I don't like doing this here. I don't like it at all. That's SPRC apparently isn't the place to do that. Neither is the dais. I don't know how to affect better street design as a member of the public. I just don't anymore. So I have to say I do support this motion because I think the community's intent has been made clear, and I don't think we've been given a whole lot to work with. To if we go back to Crystal City tomorrow and they ask us, Transportation Commission, what did you do to address our concerns? I don't think we've been given a whole lot to work with to push back and say, well, here's what's been done to try and mitigate some of your concerns that, some of them are valid. And especially in the context where we're trying to sell this, or this is trying to be sold as a community benefit. I absolutely support the motion.
All right. Any other discussion of the motion? I don't see any hands up, but I'll give everybody one more second. All right, all those in favor of the motion to amend, to add the language about the design of Ball Street to read, hold on, I have the language here. To design it in such a way that it minimizes its attractiveness as a cut-through route, such as by example through a driveway-style apron at the intersection of South 12th Street. All those in favor, Commissioner Clement.
Aye.
Commissioner Raddick.
Aye.
Commissioner Brose.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Wadsworth.
Aye.
Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Rich.
Aye.
Commissioner Price, I didn't hear you. I'm pretty sure you're in
sorry.
there, but I didn't.
No, you froze. No.
Commissioner Yeri.
Aye.
And I am also a yes, so that amendment passes. All right, is there any further discussion of the motion, which has now been amended twice, which is basically the manager's recommendation plus the amendment to open up the streetscape if by final engineering there's changes coming out of that bicycle planning process, plus the language that we just voted on about the design of South 12th Street, minimizing its attractiveness as a cut-through route. Going once, going twice, I will call the motion, I'll call the vote on the motion as amended. Commissioner Clement.
Aye.
Commissioner Raddick.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Wadsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Rich.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Yeri.
Aye.
And I am also a yes, and that makes the passage of the motion as amended unanimous. Thank you very much to everybody. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you to Mr. Gibson for answering our questions and walking us through this process.
And our next item is item number 7. This is an MTP amendment for South Greenbrier Street. This is a action item. I'll turn it over to staff. And Kelly Cornell is here from DES Transportation.
Hello, everybody. Let's see if I can get this right.
Thanks for sticking with us, Ms. Cornell.
No problem. Okay. So again, my name is Kelly Cornell. I'm a transportation planner with Arlington County, and I'm going to be presenting on a proposed amendment to the Master Transportation Plan map, which would remove 2 planned neighborhood minor streets within the Greenbrier apartment property, which is bordered by South Greenbrier Street to the west and Columbia Pike to the south. I have a quick presentation planned, just going over existing conditions and the context of the site, the transportation background, and then the proposed changes staff would like to see made to the MTP. Okay. So for context, The property is located along Columbia Pike, just west of 4 Mile Run. It falls within the boundaries of Columbia Pike's Neighborhoods Form-Based Code, as you can see in the map here. Zooming in a little closer, the site is currently home to garden-style apartments, which are accessed by narrow drive alleys or alleyways. You can see in the pictures adjacent to the map. And for additional context, which will be relevant later, you get an idea in this map of the steep topography that borders the property on its east side, and there the large grade change that happens at that location. So moving on to the transportation background of this project. As I mentioned earlier, this property is covered by the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code, which was adopted in November 2013. At the time of adoption, the Neighborhood Form-Based Code introduced a network of planned streets to be achieved through private development. It was understood at the time that a more detailed analysis of topography, parcel consolidation, and other issues would further inform each site's feasibility at the time that they was actually moving forward with redevelopment. Concurrently with the 2013 Neighborhood Form-Based Code adoption, the Master Transportation Plan was also updated to incorporate all of the planned streets that were reflected on the NFBC's regulating plans map. Okay. Which brings me to the current MTP map, which is shown here. And you can see that as it currently stands, it shows 3 new planned streets within the Greenbrier apartment property. So those streets would be 9th Street, which is to the north end of the property and goes east-west. 9th Road, which is parallel to 9th Street to the south, but runs east-west. And then South Florida Street, running north-south, connecting both 9th Street and 9th Road. And the idea is that each of the planned streets would have a similar type. They would all 3 be neighborhood minor streets, which are intended to provide access to residences, carry low traffic volumes, and therefore need only be narrow travel lanes. They're not, we're never expected to carry large amounts of traffic, more for general access to the residences. Okay, so the reason I'm here tonight is to discuss the actual proposed amendments to both the Neighborhood Form-Based Code and then therefore the Master Transportation Plan map. I'm going to start with the Neighborhood Form-Based Code amendments because it provides a little bit more detail about what is being proposed or changed as part of this. So the changes, which are supported by both the developer of the site, county staff, and the Form-Based Code, Neighborhoods Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group, essentially move 9th Street South and South Florida Street to the periphery, the perimeter of the development, thus creating a little bit larger footprint for redevelopment. In addition to that, the 2 planned streets of 9th Street and South Florida would be converted from planned streets, again, the neighborhood minor streets, to alleyways. And county staff supports these amendments for a variety of reasons. One being that the future planned streets within this Greenbrier apartment complex only serve this site and do not feed into the larger transportation network. So the change doesn't impact any additional connecting streets. Also, the significant topography issue across the site complicates internal road connections and also the opportunity for any connections across multiple properties in the future. So I think the original idea was to connect to some of the adjacent properties. However, closer look at the topography shows that it would be very difficult to achieve. And finally, what's being proposed still provides a transportation connection in the same general footprint as what was proposed before. It's more a difference of the classification of the planned streets from minor neighborhood minor streets to alleyways. So, because proposed the master transportation plan's map doesn't show proposed alleyways, the changes that would need to be made to the master transportation plan would be to remove 2 of the 3 planned streets. So 9th Street South and South Florida Street. 9th Road South would remain where it is. And again, 9th Street South and South Florida Street would become alleyways and therefore need to be removed from this map because it doesn't show alleyways. So those are the changes that staff is proposing to be made. If they look familiar, well, no, this isn't the right. Hold on one moment, sorry. Yeah, this is not the right slide. Let me open the right one. Oops. All right. Am I no longer? I'm no longer sharing my screen, correct?
Correct.
All right. Let me try this again. It has an older version of my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, it's still the older version of my PowerPoint presentation. So, ignoring the the PowerPoints, this should look familiar because the Transportation Commission saw this in November of 2019, and the county board, it went in front of the county board in December of 2019 with the request to advertise. And fast forwarding to today, the current hope is to go to the county board in November of this year for adoption of the amendments to the MTP map. And that recommendation is that the county board adopt the resolution to amend the Arlington County Comprehensive Plan's Master Transportation Plan map to remove 2 planned neighborhood minor streets within the Greenbrier Apartments property bordered by South Greenbrier Street to the west and Columbia Pike to the south. That is my presentation. Sorry that it got mixed up there. Let's see. But I'm available for questions, and I believe that Joanne Gabor from Development Services is also available to help answer any questions you might have about the development in particular, as opposed to the master transportation plan amendments.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioners, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and raise your hands into Teams. Commissioner Clement, you're up first.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're only being asked to change to approve a change to the master transportation plan. But the proposal I'm looking at also says approve a use permit for the development of 2 6-story residential apartment buildings containing a total of 400 units. That's triple the current density. And a shared above grade parking garage under Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Form-Based Code. And the additional parking would actually quadruple the current parking. So my understanding is we're not just being asked to change the master transportation plan to adjust 2 roads. We are asked to approve a massive development. Now, is that true or not?
My understanding is that we are asking the Transportation Commission to only address the first part of this proposal, which is the amendment to the master transportation plan.
And that's correct, Kelly. The development is really tied to form-based code.
Yep, form-based code developments don't generally come to Transportation Commission. All of the transportation elements were generally worked out when the code was adopted. This is a little different because we're being asked to change it to account for the topography. Other commissioner questions or comments at this time? While I wait there, I just wanted to jump in with one. So I would really like to see that alternate street that continues and connects to the east of Greenbrier built. And I'm a little bit concerned that as this is moving forward, that the Greenbrier is not doing their part in making up this grade change. That if this is ever going to be achieved, we'll be putting the entire onus on making up the entirety of that grade on the property owner to the east. Can staff address whether that's true? Is the corner of this alleyway dropping at all to help make that alternate street a possibility in the future?
Chairman Slatt, this is Joanne Gabor with DES. That actually is one of the questions we asked very early on of the applicant, and they did a study that showed that based on the new road alignment and location, the topography actually was not limiting or changing where the alternate street starting point essentially was. So the elevations, in summary, the elevations didn't change significantly based on where the new roads are placed. So it does not preclude the alternate street being placed. In addition, we do have a easement and an area shown for the potential connection in the future if the development or the site to the east does redevelop.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Commissioner Lantelmi? Commissioner Lantelmi, I think you're still on mute.
I'm off now. Thank you. Yeah, I want to add on to that because I also had a concern about that eastern connection. When I was looking at the documents, it looked as though there were some big utility things being placed in that area. Ms. Gabor, you mentioned that there's an easement that will preserve that potential right of way. Is it that the easement will not be where that utility closet or that whatever that is being built, that they are not going to be in the same place?
That is correct. The utilities you saw, just for a little clarification, they are transformers that are going to be at grade and they will be screened from view as you are driving on the alley. the easement area we are holding is due north of that. I believe it's about 20 feet wide area I'm looking right now. Was there any other questions you had on that?
No, that was it. I was just concerned because once those transformers are in, they're expensive to move.
Correct. Yes,
So
we do
as long
have.
as- yeah.
Yeah, as part of our conditions, we actually do have a 20-foot wide public access easement for this specific concern that we have.
Okay, that resolves my concern. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Commissioner Lantelmi, for raising that, because I had noticed it when I reviewed the documents yesterday and then forgot to write it down as something to bring up. Any other commissioner questions or concerns? Commissioner Clement, back to you.
Okay, so on the write-up, it says by the way, a TIA was never disseminated to us, nor was a TIA summary, executive summary ever disseminated to us. Okay, so it does say in the write-up, all of the intersections listed above, and there were 6, were analyzed to determine the level of service for existing conditions, future conditions, etc. All the above intersections are currently at D or better during the peak hours for existing conditions, except as described below. So I can assume that these 2 very important intersections are currently at E or F. Columbia Pike and South Greenbrier Street, which is right at the site, and Columbia Pike and South Frederick, which is just up the street. So that's current conditions. Now we're going to triple the parking. And we are being told that these conditions are not going to be any worse after the fact. Now, I have a procedural concern here, number 1, and that is that we, the members of the Transportation Commission, cannot make decisions in a vacuum. We need to at least see the TIA executive summary when we're asked to make decisions like this. And number 2, I have a credibility issue. I simply cannot believe the conclusions that we're asked to believe, that tripling, or rather quadrupling the parking at this site is not going to make bad conditions worse. And finally, I want to say this is a matter that is definitely within the jurisdiction of the Transportation Commission. Over.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that the Transportation Commission recommend that the board adopt the resolution to amend Arlington County's comprehensive plan, master transportation plan map, to remove 2 planned neighborhood minor streets within the Greenbrier Apartments property bordered by South Greenbrier Street to the west and Columbia Pike to the south.
Second.
Is there any discussion of this motion? All right, hearing no discussion. How do you vote, Commissioner Clement?
No.
Commissioner Raddick?
Aye.
Commissioner Brose?
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi?
Aye.
Commissioner Wadsworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Buck?
Aye.
Commissioner Rich?
Aye.
Commissioner Price?
Aye.
Commissioner Yeri?
Aye.
And myself, I will vote yes. So that passes with 1 no vote. And that's all that is before us for that item. Thank you to staff.
And the next item is item number 8, other business. I'd like to announce our next meeting is November 23rd. This is the Monday before Thanksgiving, and this is technically our December meeting.
Thank you very much. And as I emailed out this morning, I apologize for the late notice, but I only recently received a request from the county board chair as to whether the commission had any recommendations for the county's legislative package. I believe I received that request today. and they've been asked for them by Monday. So thankfully we have this meeting, but I apologize that there wasn't more time to prepare on that, or to have it as a dedicated agenda item for anybody who looked at our agenda in advance. So I know I have a motion to offer, but I wanted to, before I get into that, see if anybody else has anything they want to discuss on that or motions that they want to make in that regard. All right, I will just jump right into my, Commissioner Buck.
Sure. I wanted to offer up for discussion before I try a formal motion. And maybe Mr. Best can help us out on this one. I think a lot of us have looked at Virginia code to see if the county has the authority to set a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on, say, local or a neighborhood collector street. And the code is very it's very tough to read in that regard. So I'm wondering if Mr. Best, if you know offhand what an actual answer to that might be, and failing that, would that be something the commission would be interested in advancing as a recommendation to amend the Virginia State Code to allow the county, using engineering judgment, to set 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on county-owned roads?
In fact, that topic has quite a history behind it. It was 20-some years ago. It was something we were exploring, and the issue was apparently it went back to the courts and to more enforcement, and to the when it got before a judge, there was a lot of concern from law enforcement that they would be writing tickets for people doing, sort of, 5 or so miles per hour if it went down, to 20. So with that, that was kind of tabled then 20 years ago. That has recently been interest in that. And I don't think it's been through the county attorney, but there has been interest in the last, I would probably say 6 months, but probably more in the last year. If we could do, right now we can do 15 miles per hour in a school zone or in an alley. And then, of course, it then goes to, typically 25. But, that's sort of a question for the county attorney, because I think that's kind of a gray area. But certainly there has been a lot more interest in the last year than there was 20 years ago. So I don't know if that's a help or not.
Thank you, Mr.
Just
Best.
confirms our confusion.
There is quite a bit of confusion. And it's really felt that 15 is sort of too slow and too hard to enforce, except in a school zone or alley.
Commissioner Price, you got your hand up.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, thank you. When I saw your email, I just wanted to let you know, as this commission's representative to the Lee Highway Alliance, the transportation board member, as they like to call it, I reached out to members of the Lee Highway Alliance, the leadership there, to get sort of a feel for, I know there's some issues they want to take care of in Albany, excuse me, I'm not in New York anymore, in Richmond, specifically regarding the reacquisition, or I guess reversion, of Lee Highway back to the county. And then that would take a legislative initiative. And I thought this would be an absolutely perfect forum to bring up some sort of a motion. But to their credit, it's not, that ask is not ready for prime time yet. And I find it, and this is not, you're not to blame, Mr. Chairman, but this is kind of I've been doing legislative work and putting together legislative agendas for like 15, 20 years for various organizations. And I've never been said, hey, I need some idea by Friday, where's the package? You need to send me a list of packages. I mean, we spend, in my organization now, I've spent easily 8 months to a year putting together our policies for the federal reauthorization, and never been asked to say, and I've done state work too, never been said, hey, tomorrow give us a couple of ideas of what you want to include in the package. So I find it kind of irresponsible to do that. But I want to let you know I did my due diligence and I did my outreach. But I'm saddened by the fact that you got that email saying, "Hey, let us know by Monday if you want to add to the legislative package for Arlington County." I would think that the county staff has been preparing for this for months, and only come to us as kind of, like I said, it's a little irresponsible.
Yeah, I mean, the COVID was certainly the culprit here. Normally, all of this happens in the spring, so that there is more time. And we are certainly within our rights to say that we can't turn around something in the time given. But I think there are certain sort of long-standing things that we've known that Arlington County would like to do from a transportation standpoint that we haven't been able to because of a lack of enabling legislation or due to restrictions. And this upcoming legislation may be one of our best shots at accomplishing some of those things that we've had in decades. So I think it's at least worth having this conversation, even if it is 10:26 p.m.
Right.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Yeah, I had one matter that I did, of course, forward on to you that I can raise. I'm not sure it's within our purview, but it's at least tangentially related. It's a question of renaming streets. As you probably know, cities in Virginia are able to change their street names on their own. We have to go to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, and that's under a Democratic administration. Under a Republican administration, they feel it has to go to the legislature. I would ask that we as a county be treated the same as the city for purposes of name changes.
Gotcha. And then I just wanted to jump back in on Commissioner Buck's thing and say that I am 100% supportive in adding that, in recommending the addition of something to the legislative agenda that seeks at least clarity in the Virginia Code, that Arlington County would have the ability to reduce to 20 miles an hour the speed limit on certain neighborhood streets based on an engineering study, a traffic study. Nobody wants to operate in a weird gray area where nobody's sure if they're operating under a legal precedent. So if that's something we want to be able to do, then I think we should try and get the Virginia Code made clear that we can do such a thing. I don't know how other people feel about that.
I think that's an appropriate thing for us to raise. We should have the ability to set our speed limits on our roads the same way we should be able to change the names of our roads. It's hyper local.
And then mine that I would like to introduce is, I don't know if anyone has seen my RL Now column this week, but I think there is a need for us to address how we do traffic enforcement in Arlington County, that we're not doing enough of it, and that we're doing what traffic enforcement we are doing needlessly puts our citizens in direct contact with armed officers at a time they don't need to be in contact with armed officers. And so I would really like to see Arlington seek enabling legislation to expand their abilities to do automated traffic enforcement, whether that is currently we have red light cameras, but we're limited in how many we can have. Currently, we can only do speed enforcement in school zones and work zones, and that enforcement can only tag violations that are more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, which is really quite egregious for a school zone. And there's no addressing of something like stop sign enforcement, which I know is something that can be done, and I believe even the District of Columbia does. So that's the motion I intend to make here, but I wanted to go ahead and introduce it in case there's discussion about it in advance. Commissioner Price.
I am supportive of that automated traffic enforcement. Frankly, my wife and I have been victims of in the same week, in the same location in Washington, D.C. along K Street, where they have cameras that we weren't aware of. And we've got pinged, both of us. Again, it heightened my awareness that I should really watch myself. And I'm particularly aware of the speed cameras along 295 heading toward Baltimore. My only concern about it is the reputation. These kind of speed cameras and this kind of automated traffic enforcement initiatives, the reputation of being a cash cow. In the case of the District of Columbia, I read, well, they collected over the period of about 2.5 years, like 30, I don't know, I think it was like $36 million in terms of tickets, which I guess wouldn't be a bad thing, but it also, some of the interviews I've read with some of their officials, it's like pie in the face that, we've got to be prepared if we were to move forward and I guess adopt this kind of policy or ask for this kind of policy, that would be the blowback that would occur from such an expansion of this effort. Again, I'm not in favor of this. I'm just saying it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and this would just be a first step. There's be many steps of implementation before Arlington ever had a program where we could talk about, what objective criteria can we set for where the equipment is placed, and around crash statistics and known speeding problems and that sort of thing, and that sort of thing to make sure that they're getting placed where they can do the best good for safety and not just raise the most revenue. And I think we should be having a conversation in Arlington about where does this revenue go, and can we earmark it specifically to make our streets safer in other ways, so that hopefully through design we can further limit speed, and hopefully get to the point where we just don't have speeding and we're not collecting any money from this automated enforcement, and we all live in a happy utopia where people don't die on our streets. Commissioner Wadsworth, I think, Commissioner Wadsworth, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, what I was going to say was just covered. I mean, I think the point is it's got to be about enhancing public safety, not raising revenue for the county. I think what Mr. Price was referencing was, I remembered 17 million in 1 year for the traffic light camera that's at the bottom of a hill, purposely placed there to catch people where there wasn't safety issues before. So it's got to be about enhancing public safety. It's got to be the mission, like you said.
Commissioner Lantelmi, you're up next.
Yeah, and I also want to raise there is an equity component here. Often the traffic cameras end up imposing pretty stiff fines that for some people they can deal with it, but for other families, even a $200 fine can really put them in a spiral of poverty, going into poverty, because the money simply isn't there. And the fines add up, the interest goes on it, the fees go on it, and it snowballs. So I would want to be very careful that the amount of the fines, we should have discretion on that, number one. And if they get set, they should be set at an amount that is not such that it becomes beyond punitive and in fact causes unintended consequences of essentially putting people into poverty.
Yeah, I think automated enforcement is actually an opportunity to lower our fines if we can make sure violations are ticketed more frequently. Each individual violation doesn't need to be as high to have an even better deterrent effect. Commissioner Raddick, your hand's up next.
I know the current trend is to implement or talk about equity in just about everything, but I don't really think equity has any place in talking about speeding or something that's completely in your control, like how you operate a vehicle on the road. So I'm not saying $200 fines is appropriate, but I don't see equity in this.
I'd actually say that I see equity on the other side. Low-income families are twice as likely to be killed while walking in the streets than high-income families, and you can see similar disparate numbers in the injuries and fatalities for non-whites and whites. So yeah, we also have to remember equity is on both sides of that equation. Commissioner Buck.
I just add regarding equity. I mean, we all know it reduces the number of police encounters for a minor infraction, and I think approving an ask for more authority to do automated enforcement is a step up in that direction, and the actual program design of, say, perhaps a sliding scale for fines or how funds are used to sort of reduce the argument that it's just another source of revenue. I think those are important program design elements that I hope we get a chance to chew on in the years to come.
All right, seeing no other hands up, I'm just going to go ahead and make this motion in the interest of kind of trying to move things along here. I move that the Transportation Commission recommend to the County Board that they add to their 2021 legislative package to seek local authority for implementing automated traffic enforcement, specifically expansion of the granted authority to implement automated speed enforcement to extend it to areas beyond school and work zones, the ability to self-determine how far above the limit a vehicle must be traveling to warrant a ticket, and the authority to implement automated stop sign enforcement.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion of this motion? All right. Let me go to a vote on my handy list of people. Commissioner Clement.
Aye.
Commissioner Raddick.
Aye.
Commissioner Brose.
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Wadsworth.
Present or abstain?
Abstaining, correct?
Yep.
Yes, I remember. Thank you. Commissioner Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Rich.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Yeri.
Aye.
And myself, I am a yes. So that one abstention. Great. Are there any other motions here in this item from Commissioner Lantelmi or others?
Yeah, I can make the one about the name change. You actually have it, Chairman Slide, if you could just read it in the email.
Yes, let's see, you sent me, here we go. Commissioner, this is a little weird. Commissioner Lantelmi moves that the Transportation Commission recommend that the County Board include in its legislative priorities that the Virginia Legislature grant authority to counties to change street names equivalent to the authority already granted to cities in the Commonwealth. Is the second sentence of that also part of the motion? It says this will allow Arlington to name its thoroughfares. That seemed explanatory.
Right, that's
all right.
explanatory.
Cool. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All right. And that was that Commissioner Buck that seconded?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any discussion of that amendment, of that motion? Commissioner Wadsworth.
Hey, I mean, I'm just not really familiar with this issue or why this rule exists or anything like that. So I just don't really want to vote on something I don't understand.
Yeah, I can explain it. It's a little bizarre quirk of the law. This came up with Jeff Davis Highway Route 1. We were handcuffed to change that name, even though Alexandria was able to move ahead and do so on its own. We could not because Richmond had to approve it. This is before when the legislature was still controlled by Republicans, and they simply refused. So we were stuck with the name Jeff Davis Highway, even though there was no reason to. There was no connection. Jeff Davis has no connection to us, and it's an offensive name. We were stuck with it because the legislature simply refused to change any Confederate names. Even though Alexandria can change it, Falls Church can change it, Richmond can change, Richmond City can change things. Counties could not, so Fairfax could not. We cannot. This now is up before us again because we're in the process of renaming Lee Highway. Now, the only reason we were able to change Jeff Davis Highway to Richmond Highway is because under Governor Northam and the change in the legislature, we got an opinion from the I think it was from the state, from the Attorney General, that the state Commonwealth Transportation Board could approve a name change, and the governor said yes. If there's a change of party, that can easily go away, and we lose that power yet again. It's a quirk of the law. For me, I can't see any rational reason why a county cannot and a city can for something that is local as the street name. So that's the basis for
Any other questions or discussion about this motion, Commissioner Buck?
I'd just say, if nothing else, I mean, eliminating the workload that was likely associated with having to justify going to the CTB and then having to actually do it just for a name change. That alone seems to speak in favor of this pursuing this change.
Anyone else? Alrighty, then on the motion before us about parity with cities and the ability to change street names, Commissioner Clement,
Aye.
Commissioner Raddick,
Aye.
Commissioner Brose,
Aye.
Commissioner Lantelmi,
Aye.
Commissioner Wadsworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Buck,
Aye.
Commissioner Rich,
Aye.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeri,
Aye.
and I also vote yes. That's unanimous. Any other motions or discussion before we wrap this meeting?
I'll just speak up because you're not seeing my hand.
Oh yeah, it's not appearing on my thing. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I wanted to make a motion regarding the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, recognizing that it's a little fuzzier than the other two, and I will drop the wording into the chat pod so you have it. Technology. That the county staff resolve that the county staff consult with the county attorney regarding the authority enabled by the current Virginia code for the county to set a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on locally owned non-arterial streets. Should the county attorney find that the Virginia code does not provide the authority, or if the language is too unclear to make a definitive finding, that the county seek Virginia code changes or amendments to provide that authority.
I'll second that. That's great wording. Any discussion of that motion? Too many windows open. Oh, all right. I don't see anybody's hand, so let's just go ahead and move to a vote on that. Commissioner Clement.
Aye.
Commissioner Raddick.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Lantelmi.
Aye.
Commissioner Wadsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Buck.
Aye.
Commissioner Rich.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Yeri.
Aye.
And I also vote yes. That passes unanimously. Anything else for the good of the order before we wrap this up for another month?
Couple of weeks.
Or at least a few weeks.
Is,
Awesome, great.
Quick question.
Commissioner Wadsworth.
So no meeting in December. Next time is our last meeting of the year.
Yeah, our late November meeting is in fact our December meeting.
Got it.
And
Do you
what
have
day
a
is that again?
Monday?
The
23rd.
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 Okay.
Yeah, normally it would be on, Thursday the 26th, but nobody wants to meet then. That would be bad.
Yeah. I think it's going to
Might
be
as
my
well.
last
No one's
meeting. It's
going
my 3 years, so we can do the fireworks and the magic show after the end of the.
Oh,
Do you not want to be reappointed for another 3?
I don't think that's allowed.
yes, it is.
It is allowed. I'll
It
talk to you
is.
all.
Yeah.
What do you think? I've only been
And
here
you're
for
back
3 years,
on.
Commissioner
Look at
Wadsworth?
his smile disappear.
We like it.
All right, I'll see you guys.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Mr. Best.
Good
Bye.
night. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.